People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, a police officer has been suspended after a video of a violent arrest went viral on social media. Accusations of racism and even protests followed. But with only half the picture emerging thus far, have the authorities once again bowed to the mob? Next up, a man's been remanded in custody after being charged with the attempted murder of an army officer. Anthony Hassan appeared in court this morning. I'll cross live there this hour for a full update. And today, 2 top Tories have thrown their hats into the ring to be the next Conservative leader. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has positioned himself as the Tories' best chance of seeing off Nigel Farage's Reform Party, while Tom Tugendhat has said that he's prepared to leave the ECHR. And, of course, the Ginger Winger's back. Prince Harry, he's at it again. He's been moaning about the media to the media. He's even claiming his war with the tabloids was a central piece in destroying his relationship with the rest of the royals. Still moaning on. That's all coming between now and 6 o'clock. Well, as the show, we've got an action-packed show ahead. Astonishing images from Manchester Airport yesterday, but we've only seen half the picture. The outrage, the protests, the community division, the cries of Allah Akbar outside Rochdale Police Station last night, stoved on by those, in my opinion, attempting to create division. The police officer has been suspended, but with Manchester Police being absolutely adamant there's more to this than meets the eye before the footage we saw. Why we're leaping to such conclusions so far? Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has just said we need to look at the full picture. We need to calm things down and not use it for political reasons. We've got loads to talk about on that today. Send your views in on the issue that's really got you talking. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do that. But before we kick off, it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. A police officer has been suspended from all duties after a video emerged appearing to show a person being kicked in the head during an altercation at Manchester Airport. Greater Manchester Police says 3 of its officers were seriously injured when they attended to reports of an assault in the airport car park, which happened before the event seen in this video. That included a female officer who suffered a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and a fray, and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. The Prime Minister says he understands concern over the footage, and the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, who's meeting the Home Secretary today, has appealed for calm. A man has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed army officer in Kent. 24-year-old Anthony Essan has been remanded in custody after appearing in court today. He was arrested near his home in Rochester just 30 minutes after the violent attack. He's also been charged with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. It's after Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who's in his 40s, was stabbed in Sallyport Gardens near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. He remains in hospital in a serious but stable condition. In other news, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick will stand for the leadership of the Conservative Party, promising to win back voters who switched to Reform UK. He's the third Tory to throw their hat in the ring after James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Mr Cleverly says he's best placed to unite the party after a crushing election defeat. But Tom Tugendhat told GB News the Conservatives have lost trust after failing to deliver lower taxes and immigration.
You've seen what's just happened in the recent election. We lost the trust of the British people because we failed to deliver. And I've got a track record of delivery, whether that's in the army on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, or whether that's in Parliament standing up to those who would threaten us, those authoritarian dictators. And that's got me sanctioned by countries like China and Russia and Iran. And, of course, I've been delivering in government, as the security minister, making sure that we are safe. And I can't talk about all the areas that I've been working on as security minister for obvious reasons, but absolutely prioritising the interests and security of the British people is exactly what I've done.
The Prime Minister says offshore wind will soon power 20 million British homes as he launched the new state-owned GB Energy. Speaking during a visit to an engineering facility in the northwest of England, Sir Keir Starmer said the firm's partnership with the Crown Estate would help turbocharge Britain's transition to clean energy.
Now there is a massive prize within our reach. And make no mistake, the race is on to get there. Until now, I feel like we've been sort of tying up our laces in the changing room. No more. I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race for clean energy. And why not? We've got the potential, we've got the ports, we've got the people, the skills, and now we've got a mission-driven government.
The NHS is urging blood donors to come forward amid an urgent shortage of certain blood types. The Health Service has issued an amber alert after national stocks of O negative and O positive blood types fell to unprecedentedly low levels. It's understood that the recent cyber attacks in London hospitals and more people missing appointments has contributed to that shortage. Hospitals are being asked to restrict transfusions of O blood types to essential cases and, where possible, use substitutions. Some breaking news to bring you now. A 40-year-old woman has become the first person to be charged under new XL bully laws. Ashley Warren was charged over the death of Esther Martin, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs in Essex in February. And it is the first case of its kind since new laws on owning XL bullies came into force this year. 2 Just Stop Oil activists have been found guilty of criminal damage after throwing tinned soup over Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers in 2022. Anna Holland and Phoebe Plummer, who are both 22 years old, damaged the celebrated artist's sunflowers, which is on display at London's National Gallery. They threw 2 tins of Heinz tomato soup over the 1888 work, which is covered by glass, before kneeling down in front of the painting and gluing their hands to the wall beneath it. And finally, the first trailer for a new film about one of the world's most influential musicians has just arrived.
We got a feeling we were getting a glimpse of the future.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son?
And in case you hadn't guessed, the film tells you the story of Bob Dylan, who's played by Timothée Chalamet, starting with his arrival in New York in the early 1960s. The actor consulted his friend Austin Butler, who recently played Elvis Presley, for advice on transforming himself for the role, which features all his own singing. A Complete Unknown is expected to hit theatres later this year. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, we start the show today with the fallout from the incident where a police officer kicked a man in the head as he lay on the floor. A warning that some viewers might find the following images distressing. Greater Manchester Police has suspended a firearms officer after these scenes, which are said to have happened at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. Last night, an estimated 200 people protested outside Rochdale Police Station, shouting, "Shame on you." And in fact, some of them were even shouting, "Allah Akbar." Now, just to run through a few of these details before we head to our Home and Security editor, Mark White. We've only seen a part of the picture so far. The footage shared shows the aftermath to an incident Greater Manchester Police are claiming led to the injury of 3 officers, including a woman, a female police officer, getting a broken nose. These were rapid response police from a different unit who responded to an emergency call and came through and acted in the heat of the moment to contain a situation which they weren't fully aware of what that was. Of course, then accusations of racism followed and a huge protest outside Rochdale Police Station last night. To chew all this over, let's go now to GB News' Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, I was just saying that we've only seen half of the story here, a part of the picture, the aftermath to what Greater Manchester Police claimed happened before it. And yet, this video has gone viral. It's causing huge community tensions, protests and cries of Allah Akbar outside Rochdale Police Station last night. Mark White, bring us up to speed.
Well, these viral videos rarely tell us the whole story. In fact, they don't even tell us half the story. This is the very end sequence in what was a violent episode in which 3 police officers were attacked, according to the police, and knocked to the ground. That female police officer, as you mentioned there, smashed in the face, suffered a broken nose. All 3 of those officers required treatment in hospital. And those attending officers, those backup officers you refer to, are the ones that you're seeing rushing in on this video here, trying to take control of the situation. Now, they had been listening to their colleagues, because the way that the modern police radio systems work is that when you are in need of urgent assistance, you press a panic button, which then opens your microphone, so you don't have to keep pressing that. You can continue then to try and defend yourself. And then at that point, of course, the officers will be able to hear everything that's going on. So they were hearing the screams of their colleagues as they were being violently assaulted, as they're rushing to the scene, knowing that they're going to deal with some violent offenders. Their first task in that scenario is to try to gain control of the situation. We've got another clip that we can show you, which is just slightly before the point there on the video that we were showing there, when those armed officers first start arriving in this airport underground car park. This is that clip.
What are you doing now? You're on camera. You're on camera. No, we are doing no. We're normal civilians. No. We have not done nothing. We have not done nothing. Look, we have not done nothing. We're just recording. I can't go home. You are showing he's getting locked up. No, what?
Well, you can hear those men there protesting their innocence, saying that they haven't done anything. But the officers that were subjected to that brutal attack are there as well, and they're pointing out these men as being responsible for that attack. So armed with this, these officers then fairly robustly get these men down to the ground, because for them they're perceiving clearly a threat. According to their colleagues who've just been attacked, these men are violent. They've just assaulted, allegedly, some of their colleagues, so they need to get them down. They need to control them. They need to handcuff them. It's violent to look at, of course it is. But what the police will say is, you know, it's a proportionate response, that when you're dealing with a violent individual, you've got to meet that threat with a violent response as well. Now, 2 of the 4 men who have now been arrested on charges of fray and assaulting emergency service workers have been released from prison. Their lawyer posted a video on social media talking about their next steps in complaining to the police. This is a clip of that video.
They were released not long ago from Cheadle police station. They then had to make their own way to the hospital. But in reality, because they've had head injuries, it was the police duty to take them to a hospital. But nevertheless, they made their own way. And now I've documented their injuries, and we are headed to Rochdale police station to make a formal complaint of assault and wounding.
And Mark White, in this last half an hour, this has taken on a decidedly political angle. The gentleman who was calling for those protests outside Rochdale last night was a Jack Khan. He's previously stood for George Galloway's Workers' Party as a candidate in Bolton South. And Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, has just said this is not a clear-cut situation, calling for calm. Very, very good politics, in my opinion. And he's warning, don't exploit this situation for political purposes. Mark White, wise words in a tense situation.
Yes, because we've got a situation where people are posting viral videos, and very selective viral videos that show the very end sequence in, as I say, a violent episode that unfolded with police officers assaulted and then their colleagues rushing to the raid and robustly dealing with those they believed to be responsible for these assaults on the other officers. Now, you have to ask these people that are posting these selective clips why there's no images that are being posted of the assault on the police officers who were trying to carry out an arrest and a detention after a suspect had been pointed out to them for an earlier assault. None of that video is up there, only video that clearly shows the police in a bad light. Now, Andy Burnham, of course, as the Mayor of Greater Manchester, has access to a lot of the information, and that's why he is calling for calmer heads. He is saying there is more to this story. But there are others on the other side of the argument who are suggesting that there should be more protests, like we saw last night in Rochdale, more people out on the streets. And that's worrying, Martin, because we only need to think back a week to what happened in Leeds and the potential for things to spiral out of control.
Yeah, some of those protesters last night were bellowing Allah Akbar into megaphones. May I ask you, Mark, procedurally, in terms of that missing evidence or the evidence the police have of the previous attacks, do you think they'll be complied to release that to show their side of the story? Or is that now evidence that will be subjected in a court of law, therefore we won't see it? When do you think we'll see, if you like, the police's version of earlier events?
Sadly, we won't see any of the police body-worn camera, if we see any of it at all, until the end of this process, and that's the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the policing watchdog, any subsequent disciplinary or court cases that come off that. It's purely because it's potentially prejudicial to any ongoing criminal charges that there might be, because you're looking at the alleged assault on the 3 police officers. That will have to be prosecuted, and that evidence from those cameras will be used for that, as well as CCTV, eyewitness interviews, and perhaps some more of that viral video that they've not shown us a clip of, if they were recording it earlier when those officers were allegedly assaulted. So all of that will be gathered by the investigators from the independent watchdog, the police investigators who are running the tandem investigation, and that will piece together more accurately than these short viral videos have done the full sequence of events, and just whether that officer who was seen there kicking the head of that individual on the ground acted proportionately, given everything he thought he, was facing, that he perceived in terms of the threat to him and his fellow colleagues.
Mark White, an excellent summary. Once again, thank you very much for joining us on the show. And to continue this conversation, I'm now joined by the former Metropolitan Police Senior Investigating Officer, Peter Kirkham. Peter, welcome to the show. Outlining there with great clarity, we only have a small part of the picture here. The police were acting, we have to take their word for it, of an earlier incident, a violent incident, Greater Manchester Police being very firm, saying 3 officers needed hospital treatments, including a woman with a broken nose. And so, therefore, Peter, operationally, from a police point of view, when the boys get that call down the radio and they're responding to violence, they're going to go in to try and contain that situation as quickly and effectively as possible. And, Peter, sometimes that means using a bit of force.
Good afternoon. Absolutely right. That is exactly what we employ the police to do, and we expect them to do, and we rely on them doing. They will have information, certain amount of information, before they arrive at the scene of something, and that all forms part of the backdrop to the judgment that they have to make, which is how much force to use, that they can justify as being reasonable and necessary, proportionate in all the circumstances. Now, they'll make a judgment about that, and that will apply to every bit of force that they use. It doesn't matter. It's not just a global thing of, can we use some force, yes or no? It's, can I, in this case, we've seen a kick and a stamp, can we justify that as being reasonable and necessary? Maybe the officer can, I don't know. But until we hear what the officer has to say, we can't make a judgment. We won't hear what that officer has to say. The IOPC and the courts will, and we'll then hear when that happens. Personally, I think the kick and the stamp, he's going to struggle. The man was on the floor already. The only bit of his body that he was moving, that the kick and the stamp could be sort of aimed at, as it were, is the head. What's he going to do with his head? Now, there may be an explanation, I don't know, but I think he'll struggle with that. As for the rest of it, the taking them to the ground and whatever, yes, those things, perfectly legitimate. There was the use of an incapacitant spray at one point. Tasers were drawn and pointed, I believe. Each one of those things is going to have to be justified by the officers doing it. The history of the incident is going to form part of that. The context of the incident is going to form part of that. And we cannot totally ignore the fact that it happened in an airport. And we know that violence in an airport is, not always by any means, but is often something to do with some sort of an attack on an aircraft or whatever to do with international terrorism. And so that possibility is higher than it would be in the high street on a Saturday night. And so that will form part of their judgment. All of this will be investigated by the IOPC. They will make a judgment, and if they consider that it's not made out in terms of a defence using reasonable force, then they'll refer it to the Crown Prosecution Service.
And Peter, may I ask you quickly, the decision to suspend the officer from duty in field, do you think that's the right thing to do? A lot of people are angry about that. They're saying the mob has won. But considering there is this full investigation going on, and perhaps even there could be issues around his own personal safety, considering the heightened state of emotions, do you think that was the right thing for the police to do?
Suspension from duty is not a judgment. It's not a punishment. Suspension from duty is an interim measure taken to just avoid anything getting worse for the office of the public or anybody else in the meantime. The issues that you mentioned, yes, they need to be considered. But the one thing that the police service, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, will need to ask himself, this is an armed officer with a firearm that is capable of causing great damage if used inappropriately. And he will be asking himself, is this officer suitable for carrying a firearm? Now, temporarily, in the aftermath of an incident like this, any officer may be considered unsuitable for that. But the clip that we have all seen, if I was the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, I'd be asking myself about the temperament of that officer. It raises issues of loss of control. His behaviour, his actions were significantly different from other officers present at the scene. And I would want to satisfy myself of that before bringing him back onto duty.
OK, Peter Kirkham, thank you as ever for your expert insight drawn from great heritage and time on the force. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. And we'll have lots more on this story, of course, this huge story throughout the rest of the show. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. So thank you very much. Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 in the Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize of the year, and it's totally tax-free. What would you do with all that extra moolah? Well, here's how you could win the lot.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
3 Tory MPs have now thrown their hats in the ring to become the new Tory leader. We'll speak about that next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
You think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way. And maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 3:28. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Later in the show, I'll cross live to Wethersfield in Essex. After the locals fought plans to house migrants at a former RAF base, now they can end up having a new mega prison built on the same site. Now, the race to replace Rishi Sunak as Tory leader is hotting up. Less than 24 hours after nominations opened, 3 MPs, James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick, have all said that they'll stand. I'm joined in the studio by GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, 3 hats in the ring, 3 in a bed. Tell us, we heard yesterday about James Cleverly, only I can unite the Conservatives. Tell us about today's double entrance.
So, interesting one. Today, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick both announcing, as was widely expected, that they are throwing their hats in the ring. Tom Tugendhat appeared on this channel earlier today, and he had some rather hardline things to say about the ECHR. In fact, we've got a clip of this. Let's just take a look at that now and see what he said.
No, I've been very, very clear. I am prepared to make any decision that will keep the British people safe. And just look at the last 5 years where we haven't delivered. I am prepared to leave the ECHR or indeed any other institution that doesn't serve the interests of the British people.
So that's surprising because Tom Tugendhat is really thought of as being part of the moderate wing of the party. But clearly, given the pressure from the right, from reform, he's feeling this pull to the right in this way. He didn't say he will leave the ECHR, but he at least left the door wide open. And if you look at what Jenrick has said in the last few hours as well, he's even more explicit about it. He's saying, yeah, we should leave the ECHR, but also he is gunning for those reform votes. So he knows that those are absolutely essential to win the membership. It's a slightly different case when you go to the broader public for an election because you have to build a broad coalition. The membership care about a very specific set of issues: migration, Europe, borders, law and order, and that's where we're seeing the opening pitches arrive at this point.
A lot of those voters, they hemorrhaged to Reform UK. A lot went the other direction too, to the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. But in putting themselves forward as, if you like, the antidote to Nigel Farage or the alternative to Nigel Farage, is that plausible? These people were in charge for many years where we didn't control our borders, we didn't control taxes, we fell to net zero and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real problem they have, isn't it? Is that several of these names were in the Home Office as ministers, either as Home Secretary or, as in Jenrick's case, Immigration Minister. So they have their fingerprints all over this, and yet they nonetheless have to walk the tightrope and say, I have experience, but I represent change. And it's a very difficult case, particularly with reform being in Parliament. It's not. This is a long race. They have at least, 3.5 months to battle it out. It will get dirty very quickly, particularly over these sorts of problems.
Superb, Adam Cherry. And just to let you know, the bookies' favourite is Kemi Badenoch at 2-1. She hasn't even declared yet. Jenrick 7-2, Tugendhat 5-1, Cleverly 6-1, Suella Braverman distant now 50-1. They can hear a brand new interview with Tom Tugendhat on State of the Nation, presented, of course, by Jacob Rees-Mogg, and that's from 8 o'clock this evening, right here on GB News. Now, there's loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. I'll discuss the news that Sir Keir Starmer is set to meet European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Well, of course he is, as this is another step along the road to rejoining the European Union. But first is your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. A police officer has been suspended from all duties after a video emerged appearing to show a person being kicked in the head during an altercation at Manchester Airport. Greater Manchester Police says 3 of its officers were seriously injured when they attended to reports of an assault in the airport car park, which happened before the event seen in the video. That included a female officer who suffered a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. The Prime Minister says he understands the concern over the footage, and the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, who's meeting the Home Secretary today, has appealed for calm. The jury in the trial of Hassan Janga, who's accused of murdering Good Samaritan Chris Marriott, has been discharged after failing to reach any verdicts. Mr. Marriott had been out for a post-Christmas walk with his wife and 2 young sons when he was run over while coming to the aid of a stranger in the street. A man has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed army officer in Kent. 24-year-old Anthony Essan was arrested near his home in Rochester just 30 minutes after the violent attack. This after Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who's in his 40s, was fatally stabbed in Sallyport Gardens near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. He remains in hospital in a serious but stable condition. And a 40-year-old man has become the first person to be charged under new XL bully laws. Ashley Warren was charged over the death of Esther Martin, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs in Essex in February. It's the first case of its kind since new laws on owning XL bullies came into force this year. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2874 and €1.1864. The price of gold is £1,837.25 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,107 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, if you want to get in touch with us at GB News, of course, it's gbnews.com/you'll say. I read out the best of your messages in the show. We've already had hundreds on the topic that's got you going today. The busiest we've ever seen, you'll say, that's what Rob says, who brings them through to me on the Manchester Airport policing incident. Get your views in. We'll read them out before the end of the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M4 Prince of Wales Bridge westbound from England into Wales. There's a lane blocked for a broken down vehicle in the roadworks area, causing queues. Also on the M4, this time eastbound in Berkshire, there's a lane closed for recovery work following an earlier broken down lorry between junction 14 Hungerford and 13 for Chieveley. Slow for the M1 northbound in Buckinghamshire. There's a lane blocked for a vehicle having a tyre change between junction 14 Milton Keynes and 15 for Northampton. Queues on the M26 westbound in Kent in the roadworks area at the intersection with the M25 at junction 5. It's also slow in Kent for the M25 anti-clockwise up towards the Dartford tunnels. Estimated travel time around 30 minutes. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:39. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, at 4 o'clock, we'll hear live from Kamala Harris, the woman who, according to one respected defence expert, would be a danger to the security of the West if she becomes the US president. But before that, a man has been remanded in custody after appearing in court, charged with the attempted murder of an army officer in uniform near a barracks. Anthony Hassan is accused of repeatedly stabbing Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton in Gillingham on Tuesday. And GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters is at Medway Magistrates Court. Charlie, welcome to the show. A story which many people in Britain are still struggling to come to terms with. Tell us, what's the latest?
Hi, Martin. Well, it was an unusual scene here at Medway Magistrates Court this morning because Anthony Hassan, aged 24, charged with attempted murder, but arrived in the dock in cuffs. That's unusual. The Crown Prosecution Service rules state that should only happen if someone is considered to be a risk in the court, a risk of violence there, necessitating that cuffing of the defendant. When the district judge here asked Anthony Hassan to confirm his name, his address and his date of birth, he repeatedly asked why. And then when he was told to sit down, Anthony Hassan ignored that instruction from the judge. Now, the defence barrister said that psychiatric papers were being prepared to see whether Mr Hassan was fit to plead at his next court appearance, which will be at Maidstone Crown Court on August the 22nd. But the prosecution went through their case. Well, not only has Anthony Hassan been charged with attempted murder, but also the possession of an offensive weapon, because on Tuesday evening, when the police were called just before 6 p.m, they found 2 knives at the scene where Mark Teaton, the Lieutenant Colonel in the Royal Engineers, was found severely wounded. They also then found several more knives at the address of Anthony Hassan in Rochester, where they arrested him shortly afterwards. So he will now face a hearing at Maidstone Crown Court on August the 22nd.
OK, Charlie, so also evidence came out there was a machete, a third weapon that was seen by locals, and of course that begs the really horrendous proposition that this could have been much worse, Charlie. It could have been much worse. And of course yesterday people were talking about the chilling parallels with the Lee Rigby incident.
Well, the Colonel, Mark Teaton, is now in a stable but serious condition after he was airlifted from that location on Tuesday evening. Sallyport Gardens is the address where the incident took place, the alleged multiple stabbings that he endured. It's right down the road from a barracks, where one Royal School of Military Engineering is based. Now, the Colonel is said to be a manager there. He's leading as an instructor in that location, but he's now in hospital after those injuries on Tuesday evening, with Anthony Hassan, aged 24, charged with attempted murder and offensive weapons.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie Peters, for joining us there from Medway Magistrates Court. Thank you. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to reset our relationship with the European Union, but will rejoining the EU be on the agenda when he meets European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And this week, it's disabled adventurer Nick Wilson and rock engineering director Elliot Dyson-Barber from the Institution of Engineering and Technology.
Yes, earlier this month, Nick Wilson summited Mount Snowdon unaided. The first time this has been attempted with the help of an engineered electric mobility chair called the Rock Climber.
Tell us what you did, when you did it, and why it's so amazing, because it's the first time this has been done, isn't it?
You feel lazy, you should try being me, going up a mountain and I was just pressing the accelerator. these poor buggers had to go and come up behind me. It still hasn't sunk in properly, you know, and to be the first disabled person to do it during Disability Pride Month is... I couldn't have asked for anything else. But it's all possible because of Rock Engineering. You know, they've been working on this for the past 2 years to create this machine. I wouldn't be here because I was struggling a lot with loneliness and isolation. I was very suicidal, and they literally saved my life with this project.
The whole thing came around by accident, you know, meeting Nick, and he kind of highlighted some issues to us in terms of his accessibility, and he you know, he lives in Toaster near where we're based, and he came down the high street and sort of said, I can't even get into the shops in the high street.
So, Nick, you just mentioned that the kind of place you were in before doing this, you were lonely, suicidal. Yeah. What was it like when you finally managed to scale Snowdon? Because I've done it on foot, and just being for anyone, being in nature and fresh air.
The one word that I think I've used throughout this is freeing. It is when you're so reliant on drop curves. It's freeing that you're not reliant on a hard-standing path or drop curves, wherever. You can, in rock climb, you can literally go anywhere you want. Yeah. And freeing is the big word, and it's amazing.
The People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time's 3:46. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. At 4 o'clock, we'll hear live from Kamala Harris as she keeps trying to drum up support for her bid to become the next US president. Sir Keir Starmer is set to meet the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen as part of what he says is a reset of the UK's relations with the European Union. Sir Keir said last week that the government will increase the UK's cooperation on defence and security and also illegal immigration. But am I being cynical when I ask whether overturning Brexit and rejoining the European Union might be on the agenda? Well, joining now is Dr. Andrew Lillico, who's the Chief Executive Director and Principal of European Economics. Welcome to the show, Andrew. So Sir Keir Starmer has said that it's not on the plan to have a second referendum to reverse Brexit, but could something a bit more underhand be going on? Backroom deals, political alignments, the kind of things that we'll have no say in. We won't get a vote. It would just happen. This could be death by 1,000 treaties.
don't think there's any appetite on the Labour side, certainly for any formal rejoining of the European Union or Single Market or Customs Union. In fact, if anything, the situation is quite the reverse. We had David Lammy going off to India this week trying to negotiate a free trade agreement. There was talk of Rachel Reeves being optimistic that whoever the new president is in the United States, they would seek to have a US-UK trade agreement. None of those things would be possible whilst we were in the EU. Meanwhile, we're doing other kinds of measures that would be inconsistent with EU membership. So, for example, a week or two ago, we were the first country in Europe to legalise the production of lab-grown meat. So that kind of thing and other kinds of new technologies coming in, we will be in a position to make use of where the EU is behind on its regulatory agenda. So I don't think there's any real appetite for that. What they're interested in, I think, is seeking to have some kind of migration agreement. They're looking at having some sort of veterinary agreement to ease things on the border with Northern Ireland and probably to do something on security and defence. It's in Starmer's interest to talk this up as if this was some kind of big deal. He talks about how the Boris Johnson's deal with the EU was a botched deal and that we can be much more intimate. I don't think that's right at all. The UK-EU free trade agreement, or the trade and cooperation agreement, is the most wide-ranging and intimate agreement that the EU has with any non-EU, non-European Economic Area member other than Switzerland. So it's an extremely intimate agreement that we have with them now, and I don't think there's a lot of scope for improving it, really. I think it's just politics, and I don't think it'll go very far.
And Andrew, it's an agreement that comes with many traps and caveats. Michel Barnier, my old adversary, was an expert negotiator. He said repeatedly, we cannot cherry pick. So the notion that we can waltz to Brussels and say, right, we want a better trade agreement without them expecting anything in return is for the birds. And consistently, Andrew, the criteria on the table has been, if you want a better deal with us, you've got to accept freedom of movement.
I 100% agree that the EU will have no interest in cherry picking, and that's always their message. And I also agree that they would want their pound of flesh for any kind of extra. If there were anything that Starmer particularly wanted or felt he needed, then they would be looking at additional migration aspects, probably as the first port of call, probably some additional student visa arrangements or some kind of extra work visa arrangements, something of that sort. Now, it's not as though this situation in the UK is that we're particularly tough on immigration as things stand. So I don't know how enormously different that would make things either, to be honest. But that is, you're quite right, that's the kind of thing that they would try.
Certainly, we need to be keeping an eye on this Brexit watch. We're going to be keeping our beady eye on it here at GB News. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Andrew Lillico, the Executive Director and Principal of Europe Economics. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, the number of tool theft incidents in the UK has reportedly increased by a massive 150% in the last 5 years. Tradespeople up and down the country are being warned to take additional precautions, while those in the industry are lobbying the government to take action. Sophie Reaper has this report.
CCTV footage of joiner Paul Duffy becoming a victim to tool theft. He attempted to prevent the thieves from escaping, but was then attacked. This is the third time in 3 years that Paul has come face to face with this crime, a series of incidents that has left him in over £10,000 of debt.
After that incident, I was paranoid, to be fair. I was on site and I was constantly checking my gear, so I take a bit of time off work for that. I mean, I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, and that's how I provide for my family. My tools are ways to make money, and that's and they just steal it, and they're not bothered. Just please, man. Always, man.
Unfortunately, Paul isn't alone. The most recent figures show a tradesperson in the UK has their tools stolen every 9 minutes.
It's increasing because it's easy to do, it's relatively risk-free, and it's very profitable for the tool thieves. So it's gone up from roughly 23,000 incidents a year to 58,000 over the last 5 years.
As a result of this rise in tool theft incidents, Van Watch wants all tradespeople to take 4 major precautions. Take care where you park, invest in physical security, look into the forensic marking of tools, and lastly, take out high-quality insurance.
If you're in the trade for 40 years, at the current rate of tool crime, you'll probably suffer from this 5 times in your career. So, don't be complacent about it.
Meanwhile, in Westminster, Trade Community Network On the Tools have been working with the government on tackling this issue.
We're constantly trying to lobby government, ultimately, and industry to support tradespeople more. So one of the biggest things we want to try and do is stop the sale of power tools at car boots. So car boots markets are an absolute breeding ground for the resale of all these tools. So ultimately, if it's really hard to resell these things and there's a high risk of someone being punished in a more impactful way, you would expect that the tool theft numbers would lower.
Now, as the number of tool theft incidents continues to grow, trade workers will have to hope that new regulations and methods of prevention can actually cut through. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
That's a terrible problem for tradesmen. My mate Tom, painter and decorator, had his van cleared out 4 times. Insurance gone through the roof. The police, he said, simply don't give a monkeys. Now, talking about the police, we've had hundreds and hundreds of your says about the incident at Manchester Airport. Let's go through a few of them now. Michelle says this: I say good for those Manchester coppers for doing their job, keeping the public and their colleagues safe. If I was in trouble, I'd want those officers to show up, not the woke police farce. Lucia, however, says, I'm afraid it doesn't look good for that policeman. Derek says you can understand why getting people to join the police these days is so difficult. Hugh says this: the police are vilified for doing their job, so let's commit crime, getting caught, and then bring out the race card. What a load of rubbish. And Bill says Andy Burnham is a voice of common sense. And indeed, we'll have much more on this story after the break. That officer has now been suspended. As we just said, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has called for calm following this incident, saying people are using this for political purposes and that must stop. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, British News Channel. Now it's your weather with Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. The relatively changeable feel to the weather is going to continue as we go through the end of the week. Yes, there'll be some dry, bright weather at times, but also something a bit wet to come too. The heavier rain that we've seen across southern parts due to a waving frontal system is now clearing away towards the east, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain across southern parts as we go through this evening, and plenty of showers across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of these will continue overnight. But for many, it is actually going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but still that relatively warm, muggy feel to things, with temperatures, especially in your towns and cities, not really dropping a huge amount. As we look through tomorrow morning then, plenty of showers from the start across parts of Scotland. These will be most frequent across western parts, and here they will be quite heavy at times, even as we go through the morning, and we're going to see more as we go through the afternoon. Eastern parts of Scotland starting the day largely dry and bright, and here it should stay mostly fine through large chunks of the day. Some showers feeding in across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, dry and brighter further east. 1 or 2 showers perhaps for Wales and southwest England, but the Midlands, East Anglia and southern southeastern parts should have a bright and fine start. As we go through the day, though, we are going to see a few more showers developing. They are still going to be quite hit and miss in nature, relatively scattered for many of us, so especially across England and Wales, towards the east and south in particular, largely dry, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England, quite a few showers, some heavy, some thundery, and temperatures likely to be up a little bit compared to today, with highs of around 24 or 25 Celsius, feeling warm in any sunshine. More showers to come, particularly towards the northwest as we go through tomorrow evening, a drier picture towards the south and southeast. More showers on Saturday, some of them are looking pretty heavy, but a ridge of high pressure is building, which brings a more settled, drier picture for Sunday. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. We got queues on the M19 northbound in Perth and Kinross up towards junction 12, the Broxton roundabout. Estimated travel time around 20 minutes. Slow for the M60 clockwise in Manchester between junction 9, Trafford Park, and 13 for Worsley. We got the usual queues on the M5 northbound to join the M6 at junction 8. Estimated travel time there around 25 minutes. Slow in the roadworks on the M4 westbound in Berkshire between junction 13, Cheveley, and 14 for Hungerford. Queues on the M11 southbound in Essex. There's a lane closed for a broken down vehicle between junction 9, Saffron Walden, and 8 Bishop Stortford. And in Kent, we've got stop-start traffic on the M25 anti-clockwise at the Dartford tunnels. Estimated travel time around 30 minutes. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I won £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm.
you made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, stand-by to hear from the US Vice President Kamala Harris. Donald Trump said he's not going to be nice about Harris, who he called radical and a new victim. Will Harris bite back? We'll bring you her speech live from Houston, Texas shortly. And a police officer has been suspended after a video of a violent arrest went viral on social media. Accusations of racism and protests followed. But with only half of the picture emerging, have the authorities once again bowed to the mob? And a man's been remanded in custody after being charged with the attempted murder of an army officer. Anthony Hassan appeared in court this morning. And have the latest on that story this hour. And Prince Harry has been at it again. He's been moaning about the media to the media once again. He's even claiming his war with the tabloids and not his wife was a central piece in destroying his relationship with the rest of the royals. And that's all coming between now and 6 o'clock. Once the show, always a delight to have your company. Hundreds and hundreds of messages have come in today on the topic of that video from Manchester Airport. The police officer has been suspended. There were protests outside Rochdale police station last night, driven by a local politician who seems to want to divide the community. Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham spoke in the last hour, calling for calm, saying the situation is more complicated and nuanced. Wise words, well spoken, because a previous incident seems to intimate very clearly an assault on officers, including a female officer. That evidence hasn't come out, and yet half of social media seems to have already made its mind up. Send your views in, gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon to you. Let's bring you the top story today from the GB newsroom. A police officer has been suspended from all duties after a video emerged online showing someone being kicked during an altercation at Manchester Airport. Greater Manchester Police says 3 of its officers were seriously injured when they attended to reports of an assault in the airport car park, which happened before the event seen in the video, with one female police officer suffering a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. The Prime Minister says he understands concern over the footage, and the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has appealed for calm. Well, also in the news today, a man has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed British Army officer in Kent. 24-year-old Anthony Isan has been remanded in custody after appearing in court today. He was arrested near his home in Rochester just 30 minutes after the violent attack. He's also been charged with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. It's after Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who's in his 40s, was stabbed near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. He remains in hospital. He's in a serious but stable condition. Politics, and former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick says he'll stand for the leadership of the Conservative Party, promising to win back voters who switched to Reform UK. He's the third Conservative to throw his hat into the ring after James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Mr Cleverly says he's best placed to unite the party after their crushing election defeat. But Tom Tugendhat says the Conservatives have lost trust after failing to deliver lower taxes and immigration. The Prime Minister says offshore wind will soon power 20 million British homes as he launched the new state-owned GBNews. Speaking during a visit to an engineering facility in the northwest of England, Sir Keir Starmer said the firm's partnership with the Crown Estate would help turbocharge Britain's transition to clean energy.
Now there is a massive prize within our reach. And make no mistake, the race is on to get there. Until now, I feel like we've been sort of tying up our laces in the changing room. No more. I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race for clean energy. And why not? We've got the potential, we've got the ports, we've got the people, the skills, and now we've got a mission-driven government.
Now, the NHS is urging blood donors to come forward amid an urgent shortage of certain blood types. The Health Service has issued an amber alert after national stocks of O-negative and O-positive blood types fell to unprecedented low levels. It's understood that the recent cyber attacks in London hospitals and more people missing appointments has contributed to the shortage. Hospitals are being asked to restrict transfusions of O blood types to essential cases only and use substitutions where possible. 2 Just Stop Oil activists have been found guilty of criminal damage after throwing tinned soup over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers painting in 2022. Anna Holland and Phoebe Plummer, who are both 22, damaged the celebrated artist Sunflower's work, which is on display at London's National Gallery. They threw 2 tins of tomato soup over the 1888 work, which is covered by glass, incidentally, before kneeling down in front of the painting and then gluing their hands to the wall. A 40-year-old man has become the first person to be charged under the new XL bully laws. Ashley Warren, who was charged over the death of Esther Martin, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs in Essex in February. It's the first case of its kind since new laws on owning XL bully dog types came into force this year. And the first trailer for a new movie about one of the world's most influential musicians has just arrived. Take a look.
We got a feeling we were getting a glimpse of the future.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son?
Can you guess who that is? It's the story of Bob Dylan, if you're listening on radio. A little bit more difficult to tell. He's played by Timothée Chalamet, starting with his new arrival in New York in the early 60s and continuing through his life. The actor himself consulted his friend, Austin Butler, who recently played Elvis Presley, for advice on transforming himself for the role, which features all his own singing. A complete unknown is expected to hit movie theatres later this year. Should be a good watch. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in half an hour. I'll see you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. And we start today with the fallout from the incident where a police officer kicked a man in the head as he lay on the floor, and a warning that some viewers might find the following images distressing. Greater Manchester Police has suspended a firearms officer after these scenes, which are said to have happened at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. Last night, an estimated 200 people protested outside Rochdale Police Station, shouting "Shame on you" and even "Allah Akbar." Well, I'm joined now by GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So the officer suspended. I've never seen the GB News inbox this busy, Mark White. People are hugely concerned that the policeman was thrown under the bus, that we are seeing a return to very divided communities in the aftermath of this incident. Mark White, what's the latest?
Well, the police have been warning for some time about the dangers of these viral videos that come out and selectively choose a clip of an incident that can often turn violent in the latter stages of an incident that puts the police in a bad light. They never show what led up to that actual confrontation and arrest of an individual, only the violence that the police are having to employ when they are dealing with someone who's potentially been a violent offender. And this particular incident, I think, falls into that category as far as many members of the police service and indeed many of our audience is concerned, because this is just the very latter stages of an incident that began quite a few minutes earlier when police were responding to reports of an assault in the multi-storey car park at Terminal 2 at Manchester Airport. They'd identified a suspect. They were going to detain him. That suspect, according to the police, was then resisting, along with other males who joined in and fought the police, knocked 3 officers to the ground and badly assaulted them, including a female police officer who suffered a broken nose in the incident. And all the while, of course, those armed officers were rushing to the scene to try to support their colleagues who were at this time under attack. And the viral video that's out there shows that very latter stage when the reinforcements have arrived and are taking control of the situation. It doesn't show any of the officers being assaulted earlier on. We've obtained another bit of video that shows just slightly earlier on in the sequence, just as those backup armed officers are arriving, and the officers who've been assaulted are pointing out some of the suspects, some of the men that they say were responsible for assaulting them. This is the video and how it looks.
What are you doing now? You're on camera. You're on camera. No, we ain't done no. We're not civilians. No. We have not done nothing. We have not done nothing. Look, we have not done nothing. We're just recording. I can't go home. You are showing he's getting locked up. No, what? Not me.
And as far as those arrested are concerned, 4 people who have been arrested for affray and assaulting police officers. 2 of them have now been released. Their lawyer posted a video on social media saying that they are now going to lodge a formal complaint against Greater Manchester Police. This is what they said.
They were released not long ago from Cheadle police station. They then had to make their own way to the hospital, but in reality, because they've had head injuries, it was the police duty to take them to a hospital. But nevertheless, they made their own way. And now I've documented their injuries, and we are headed to Rochdale police station to make a formal complaint of assault and wounding.
So these viral videos rarely show the whole story, and on this occasion people are calling for calm, saying that that whole story is not evident in that small piece of video, as graphic as it is, that has been released. But we're still expecting that there will be people out again on the streets of Rochdale, out at the police station, protesting this evening, being called to come out by some of their community leaders who perhaps should know a bit better.
And Mark White, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, I think has been excellent on this. He has said this is not a clear-cut situation. Don't exploit it for political purposes. And Mark White, one of the individuals who was calling for people to mass last night at Rochdale Police Station is Jack Khan. He previously stood as a candidate for George Galloway's Workers' Party. But Mark, I'm getting so many people mailing me in with the big question. I'd like to relay it to you because you're the expert. Cassandra says this: where is the video of the thugs assaulting the woman or breaking the policewoman's noses? These incidents came before the police's action on the floor of the airport. Let's see what actually happened. Mark White, what's the procedure in the police releasing their body cam evidence or CCTV that in a way vindicates their previous actions? Do you think we'll ever see that evidence so we see both sides of this picture?
Well, our viewers and listeners are absolutely correct to try to point out the absence of the video of what happened earlier when these police officers were at the centre of a very violent confrontation and being kicked to the ground. Whoever posted the viral videos has not posted what happened in the minutes leading up to that, whether that video exists or not. Body-worn camera video from those officers that were attacked will exist, but for evidential purposes, the police are bound by that. They can't release that footage at this stage because it could be prejudicial, bearing in mind 4 people have been arrested and at some stage may face a prosecution. So once all of the proceedings have been dealt with, the independent investigation into how this officer acted has been dealt with, then maybe, just maybe, we'll get this body-worn camera released. But then again, maybe not, with policing leaders perhaps reluctant to do anything more to inflame tensions in their community.
But surely people are saying if there was, Greater Manchester Police, Mark, have been very, very clear that there was a previous assault on officers. As you said, they required hospital treatment, a serious situation. So what kind of person assaults a woman, a police officer, in an airport? That will colour this case, certainly evidentially, but nevertheless, it's a key part of this. If that story exists, then the public will have a right at some point, surely, to see that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the police are hamstrung a bit. You know, they just can't, because they would be found in breach, basically, of criminal law in any potential court case if they were seen as prejudicing it by allowing this body-worn camera footage to come out before those proceedings. So it will have to wait until the end of the proceedings unless someone else, some other citizen, has filmed it on their phone and they post it on social media. Thus far, it's only been those that have been determined to show us the very end of this process. But while that is all the video that exists, that's all that those that are perhaps getting inflamed by what they have seen on that video are going to see and be subjected to. So that is a worry for the police going forward, having seen these scenes in Rochdale and having seen what's happened just a week ago in Leeds. The potential for a repeat of that kind of disruption on the streets and disorder is something that is deeply concerning for policing leaders.
Mark White's an excellent summary as ever. Thank you very much for joining us on GB News. Now, joining me now to continue this conversation is the former Metropolitan Detective Chief Superintendent, Kevin Hurley. Kevin, welcome to the show. I've never seen the inbox this busy, Kevin, and I have to say the vast majority of people are hugely supportive of the police. Understanding there was a previous incident, Greater Manchester Police very, very clear on that, an assault on officers. But we've only seen half the picture here, Kevin, and now community tensions are flat. I want to ask you, operationally, during that heat of the moment, when the backup officers, it was a separate bunch of lads came in to help the officers who were already had been assaulted and under distress out in an airport. They're carrying firearms. They're in a heightened state of security. Tensions run high. And in those instances, Kevin, do you think the force used was proportionate? It's their job to take control of the situation.
Well, I don't know exactly what happened, but I'll give you my view or my take. In an act of misogynistic violence, which may or may not have been culturally driven, a policewoman had her nose broken, was punched to the floor, as did two others, and they will have been screaming for help that they were under attack. Firearms officers would have sprinted to that incident, not knowing if they were under attack from terrorists or just hooligans. As they arrive on scene, they're going to want to act decisively, and they're not going to want their firearms taken off them. So if I now look at that one chap who's turned up, I can see two policewomen standing around relatively ineffectively, and I can see two suspects. And he's rushed in to the rescue. He's taken what appears to be robust, decisive action, and it doesn't look nice. And he then goes on to take down another person single-handedly. And you'll note the other female officers are doing nothing at this stage. Finally, one is starting to get involved while the other one's moving around. So from what I'm seeing is this guy has steamed in. He's taken command. It will be for him to explain why he used that level of violence. But I can tell you now that having responded to urgent calls for help from my colleagues, particularly females, when they're assaulted, particularly if three officers have already been knocked down, I personally would never have messed around, and I never did, and I would use extreme violence if I had to gain compliance, especially if I'm one against two, as it looks like here. So there's a different side to this story. Rough people need to do violence on our behalf, since we can sleep safe in bed at night. And a further point on, I'm concerned about these comments about worried about community tension and so on. The bottom line is, it would seem to me a number of Pakistani males have assaulted police at the airport. They've knocked three down, broken one police officer's nose, and now a lot of Pakistani people outside Rochdale police station are demonstrating. Fine, let them. If they play up, suppress them with baton rounds or whatever numbers are used. We cannot allow people to assault people, our police officers, particularly women ones, in our airports where we go about our business. Now, as to the individual actions of that officer, that will need to be judged once they've got all the video cameras in, they've heard what he's got to say and everyone else. But I'm not going to prejudge him and say he went over the top, because I see a guy rushing to the rescue of two female officers after three have been put on the floor, knocked down and hospitalised. So let's see. I take a view, maybe this guy was pretty decisive, brave and robust.
Kevin Hurley, you police in a different era. We are in a very different time now. And a lot of people actually been writing into us here saying they would welcome a return to a more robust, direct action police service. We had more of that. Maybe less of these incidents would start in the first place. But nevertheless, this is 2024, Kevin Hurley, and the officer has been suspended. Do you think that's the right thing to do?
Well, I don't know. They may have seen other evidence, but to be quite clear, I suspect in an act of appeasement, senior police officers, without having all the full facts, have decided let's suspend them to stop the Pakistani community up in Rochdale, frankly, kicking off and this growing more legs. Because Unfortunately, and I see this all the time, you've now got the Home Secretary who hasn't seen it starting to pass comment. You've got the Prime Minister passing comment. Fair play to Andy Burnham, who's actually up there in the middle of it and seen some of the video. He's taking a more measured approach. I do wish people who would commentate on this would wait and see the other side of the picture. The bottom line is, if police officers are going to be pilloried and thrown under the bus in these kind of situations immediately, don't be surprised when we do see continually police officers backing off and running away like they did the other week in Leeds. You can't blame them. Let's wait and see if what this guy did was correct once you see everything. I'm not going to gainsay him. I'm looking at it and saying he came to the rescue, he got stuck in. Whether or not kicking the guy in the head or stamping on his head was appropriate remains to be seen. But I can tell you in my policing career, with difficult situations, I've used extreme violence on people, including banging their head repeatedly on the floor when they were trying to kill me. So when you're in a street fight, it's not nice. It looks bad on camera.
Kevin Hurley, thank you for being so frank and honest and open. I'm sure many people watching the show will be agreeing with your sentiments. That's the former Met Detective Chief Superintendent Kevin Hurley. Thank you very much for your wisdom and experience. Now, I've lots more on that story, of course, at 5 o'clock. There's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 in the Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize of the year and it's totally tax-free. Now, what would you do with all of that extra cash? Well, here's how you could win it all.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Guess look in. Now, yesterday I told you how the royal family's Crown Estate have returned record profits of more than £1 billion. And I'm going to explain why they're quids in again today. Thanks to one of the government's main policies, the Labour Party are going to make the king a packet. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Your mother's story is, if you don't mind me saying, quite tragic. It touched me when I was reading it this morning, Myra, because she has now passed away and she hasn't been here to see kind of justice served, has she?
That's correct. She she died not knowing that she was correct, that Horizon was a flawed system.
And Myra, when you saw, I don't know whether you saw much of Sir Ed Davey during the election campaign, going down water slides, bungee jumping and bouncing around on sort of inflatables. Knowing that he played such a significant role in that difficult period of time with your mum, how did you react to those images?
I'm of the opinion that basically they're all as culpable as each other over all of the years. So I think basically every party had its failings. We knew Horizon was wrong, but nobody would believe us. Even the Postmasters Federation didn't help. They ended up speaking to my mother like she was a thief.
Are you still angry? And what do you want to see from Sir Ed Davey today?
Angry, yes, very angry. I've been furious throughout. Sir Ed Davey today, I know he will apologise. He's already done it. If he means what he says, he'll carry on campaigning to try and get proper redress from the compensation schemes from the thousands of us who still don't have our money. I was made an offer, the £70,000 that went missing, that they stole from us, they offered me 50 because that's all they could find in their records.
The People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:28. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Later in the show, across live to Wethersfield in Essex, after locals fought plans to house migrants on a former RAF base. Now they could end up having a new mega prison built on the same site. Now let's bring you an update on the police officer who's been suspended after a man was kicked on the head as he lay on the floor. And a solicitor representing two of the men involved in the incident said the people who were allegedly assaulted are family members of a Greater Manchester police officer. Ahmed Yaqub added that the incident was an example of police brutality. I'll have much more on this story at 5 o'clock. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has been talking about one of his government's flagship policies today, and the good news for King Charles is it's going to make the royals an absolute stack of money. The Prime Minister has promised that Great British Energy will work with the monarchy's property firm to help speed up the building of offshore wind farms. The Crown Estate owns the vast majority of Britain's seabed, stretching up to 12 nautical miles from the mainland. Sir Keir says Great British Energy will bring down energy bills for good, but is that the case?
Renewable energy is a reliable source of energy and meet our mission, which is to have clean power by 2030. And the best selling point, if you like, for that, for the general public, is that their bills will go down, and they will go down not just for a short time, but for the long term. And that will come as a huge relief, I think, to families and businesses across the country.
Well, this is what the Conservatives' Shadow Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho, had to say about Labour's announcement earlier.
So firstly, let me say that GB Energy is a gimmick. What we now know is not only is it not going to generate energy, but it's not going to provide the savings that Labour talked about in the election, because actually Labour MP after Labour MP said that GB Energy would save their constituents £300, and today they haven't been able to commit to that figure because actually we know it's not true. And in fact, Labour's approach to energy is going to hike costs for families who've already been through a difficult time, increase our reliance on China, and put our overall energy security at risk.
And let's cross live now to Houston in Texas, where US Vice President Kamala Harris is speaking to the American Federation of Teachers.
Back with everyone here. Thank you. That means so much more than I can say. Randy, thank you for your friendship, your long-standing friendship. As we all know, Randy is a force, and she has been an incredible friend and an advisor to the President and me. And I want to thank you on behalf of the President and me and our country for all that you are. And I want to begin by saying a few words about our President, Joe Biden. You know, right? Yeah. So last night, our president addressed the nation, and he showed once again what true leadership looks like. He really did. His words were poignant. You know, I'll speak in a moment about the importance of reminding people of history, teaching America's true history. He thinks and talks about his work and our country, understanding what it means in terms of what we do now and how that will impact the future. He thinks about our history in the context of the importance of the work we do now. And over the past 3.5 years, and over his entire career, Joe has led with grace and strength and bold vision and deep compassion. And as he said, that's right. And as he said, in the next 6 months, he will continue to fight for the American people, and I know we are all deeply, deeply grateful for his continued service to our nation. Thank you. Thank you. And to the members of AFT, I thank you for your service to our nation. From the public service workers and higher education faculty to the school bus drivers and the custodians to the school nurses and our teachers, you all do God's work educating our children, the whole ecosystem of who are AFT members. It is you who have taken on the most noble of work, which is to concern yourself with the well-being of the children of America, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And I thank you also for your support over the years and for being the first union to endorse me this week. Thank you. I thank you. I thank you. And as you may know, I am a proud product of public education. Many of you know that my first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, taught me and educated me and encouraged me and inspired me. And years later, when I walked across the stage to receive my law school diploma, Mrs. Frances Wilson was in the audience. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's Kamala Harris there, speaking in Houston, Texas, at the American Federation of Teachers Convention. She started off by paying kind words to President Joe Biden, saying last night Joe showed what true leadership looked like. His words were poignant. Joe has led with grace, conviction and deep compassion. Over the next 6 months, he will continue to lead the USA. And then she turned to teachers. The reason she was there, she announced that this teachers union, the American Federation of Teachers, is the first union to endorse her campaign this week. There was a huge round of applause at that point. So Kamala Harris has the backing of this American Teachers Union. She then said that she was the proud product of public teaching, trying to make the line there that she has no privilege in her life. So, yeah, she's speaking there at this convention, and we'll have plenty more on that later in the show. Now, if you want to get in touch, simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay, and I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. So far, hundreds and hundreds on the suspension of the Manchester teacher. Manchester policeman, beg your pardon. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. The relatively changeable feel to the weather is going to continue as we go through the end of the week. Yes, there'll be some dry, bright weather at times, but also something a bit wet to come too. The heavier rain that we've seen across southern parts due to a waving frontal system is now clearing away towards the east, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain across southern parts as we go through this evening. And plenty of showers across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of these will continue overnight. overnight. But for many, it is actually going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but still that relatively warm, muggy feel to things, with temperatures, especially in your towns and cities, not really dropping a huge amount. As we look through tomorrow morning then, plenty of showers from the start across parts of Scotland. These will be most frequent across western parts, and here they will be quite heavy at times, even as we go through the morning, and we're going to see more as we go through the afternoon. Eastern parts of Scotland starting the day largely dry and bright, and here it should stay mostly fine through large chunks of the day. Some showers feeding in across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, dry and brighter further east. 1 or 2 showers perhaps for Wales and southwest England, but the Midlands, East Anglia and southern southeastern parts should have a bright and fine start. As we go through the day, though, we are going to see a few more showers developing. They are still going to be quite hit and miss in nature, relatively scattered for many of us, so especially across England and Wales, towards the east and south in particular, largely dry, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England, quite a few showers, some heavy, some thundery, and temperatures likely to be up a little bit compared to today, with highs of around 24 or 25 Celsius, feeling warm in any sunshine. More showers to come, particularly towards the northwest as we go through tomorrow evening, a drier picture towards the south and southeast. More showers on Saturday, some of them are looking pretty heavy, but a ridge of high pressure is building, which brings a more settled, drier picture for Sunday. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues in Perth and Kinross on the M90 northbound at junction 12 at Broxton roundabout. Slow for the M60 clockwise in Manchester between junction 10, the Trafford Centre, and 13 for Worsley. Stop-start for the M4 Prince of Wales Bridge westbound in the roadworks heading from England into Wales. It's also slow on the M49 northbound to join the Prince of Wales Bridge. Queues on the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire. There's a lane closed for an accident between junction 13 Bedford and 12 for Flitwick in the roadworks area. Stop-start on the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey. That's due to a broken down car at junction 7. And in Kent, there's stop-start traffic on the M25 anti-clockwise at the Dartford tunnels. Estimated travel time around 35 minutes. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:39 even. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, later in the show, I discuss Prince Harry's latest big interview, and guess what? He's been moaning about the media again to the media. You couldn't make it up. But before that, a man has appeared in court charged with the attempted murder of an army officer in uniform near a barracks. Anthony Hassan is accused of repeatedly stabbing Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton in Gillingham on Tuesday. Our national reporter Charlie Peters was inside Medway Magistrates Court.
A man has been remanded in custody after being charged with the attempted murder of an army officer in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. Anthony Hassan, aged 24, is accused of repeatedly stabbing Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who was airlifted to hospital on Tuesday after the incident near his barracks. Now, appearing at Medway Magistrates Court this morning, Anthony Hassan was asked to confirm his name, his address and his date of birth, but repeatedly asked why. He later refused to sit down when told to do so. He also appeared in the dock in cuffs, which is highly unusual. The Crown Prosecution Service says that people should only be restrained in the dock if they have concerns about violence. Now, the prosecution put out their reason for these charges today, saying that a member of the public called 999 after they saw a man being stabbed repeatedly. Mr. Hassan was also charged with possession of an offensive weapon after knives were recovered both at the scene and at his home in Rochester, where he was arrested on Tuesday evening. Anthony Hassan, aged 24, will appear at Maidstone Crown Court on August 22nd.
Now, the race to replace Rishi Sunak as Tory leader is hotting up. Less than 24 hours after the nominations opened, 3 MPs, James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick, have now said that they'll stand in that race. And I'm joined in the studio by GBNews reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, welcome to the studio. So James Cleverly yesterday said only I can unite the Tories, but 2 people don't think that's the case. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we've got Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick both coming out very punchy today in their leadership pitches. Tom Tugendhat, especially interesting given his position within the party. He's seen as a one-nationer, a bit of a moderate, and yet he's very clearly saying he's willing to leave the ECHR for the sake of reducing migration, clearly feeling that pull from the right. Robert Jenrick has been saying similar things, but we expected that because he resigned from government over this issue in December. It's more surprising from Tugendhat, and actually our own Jacob Rees-Mogg has sat down with Tom Tugendhat today for an extended interview. Full thing is going to air at 8 o'clock tonight, so we'll have to tune in for the full thing, but we have got a small teaser of what to expect, which I think we're going to take a quick look at now.
Bill said he would like to come in. Would you welcome him, or would you say no?
Look, I think Nigel has made his position clear.
But I'm asking your position. Would you want him in?
Look, I think Nigel has made his position clear. What I would want him to do is to champion Conservative views, and I haven't heard him doing that in favour of the Conservative Party for a little while. He's championed some Conservative views, but very much in terms of other parties. He needs to champion the Conservative Party, as you know.
As well as Conservative
exactly
views.
Right.
But you accept...
You know, Adam, I've been saying all along, and as no doubt you have too, the Conservatives have got a Nigel Farage-shaped problem, specifically going out here in that pitch, the ECHR pitch, to try and neutralise the Farage factor. Do you think that the right man to do it is Tom Tugendhat?
Look, I think he's got an uphill battle. I think, to be honest, I think this is a wide-open race, and there's a long way to go before we can make any clear judgments on this. I mean, we'll talk about where the money's going in a minute with the bookies' odds. But with Tugendhat specifically, as I said, he comes from the One Nation wing, so he has some convincing to do. But they all face the same problem of convincing the electorate, or specifically the Tory membership, that yeah, we have experience and we're the right person to execute this, but we also represent change. How do you do that when your fingerprints are all over a lot of these problems that are the reason they're in such a bad way in the first place? And it's something they're all going to struggle with over the next 3.5 months. Now, as I said, we have got the bookies' odds here. Yep. This is quite telling. You know, the money, put your money where your mouth is. Yep. So here, let's take a look at this. Suella Braverman, 33-1. I mean, she's completely crashing out. Mel Stride, 25-1. He's really struggling with momentum as well. We don't expect him really to get anywhere in this race. Priti Patel, 9-1. Cleverly, 6-1. Tom Tugendhat, 7-2. Robert Jenrick, 3-1. And the favourite is someone who hasn't actually declared yet, and that's Kemi Badenoch at 2-1. Now, as I say, I think this contest is still wide open, so you know, I wouldn't toss 100 on one of these just yet, but it's telling.
Let's quickly talk about Robert Jenrick. He's thrown his hat in the ring, and again, specifically seems to be the candidate who's positioned himself as the most likely to be able to neutralise the Nigel Farage factor. Do you think he's the man to do that job?
Well, he's been on a bit of a journey. He was, again, seen as one of these moderates. And actually, you know, people forget he was let go from Boris Johnson's cabinet as Communities and Housing Secretary in 2021. And then he's been on this sort of road to Damascus on the right. And by December 23, as Immigration Minister, he quit because the government weren't taking the problem seriously enough. I think he's a credible contender. You know, whether he's going to be the Prime Minister in 5 years... Look, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think they're going to be... It's a real uphill struggle, whoever picks up the mantle. Is he credible? Yes, but I think there are some problems there on credibility and seriousness. And
Kemi Badenoch yet to announce, of course, but Adam Cherry, the bookies' favourite, already. Lots of stuff to watch. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us that update. You can hear a brand new interview, as Adam Cherry just mentioned, with Tom Tugendhat on State of the Nation, and that's from 8 o'clock this evening, right here on GB News with Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, the Olympics start in Paris tomorrow, and there's chaos in the French capital. Homeless people have been protesting in the city, while around 600,000 tickets for the Games have not even been sold. So we'll go and Pete Tong in Paris. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, Our Greatest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Chen regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves. Because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 4:49. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, the Olympics in Paris kicks off tomorrow, but they might be in store for a whole host of problems. The River Seine, which is meant to host open water swimming and triathlon events next week, could be classed as unsafe due to pollution. And around 600,000 tickets for the Games have not even been sold, while homeless asylum seekers have been protesting in the city, demanding they get social housing. Well, joining me now is the political broadcaster at BFM TV, Antonin Andre. Welcome to the show, Antonin.
Hello.
So we're painting a picture here of a city where there's not much bonhomie in the air. And is it any surprise that the tickets aren't selling out? Almost €3,000 to watch some of the events, €700 to watch the swimming. Is there any wonder there's not much good spirit in the air? Tell us more.
Yes, but you know, it's always the same before Olympic Games. You saw that in London also when the Olympic Games were there. And just before, there is a lot of polemics. But here in France, we have not the same picture than you have in England. There is a lot of people, and we feel that tourists are arriving by now these days, just these days for the openings of the Olympics game. And there is a problem. There is an issue. Yes, it's true with La Seine, where there will be some athletes. But you know, we think that a lot of infrastructures have made that have cleaned up the Seine. And if there are some big storm, it would be a problem. But as we know now, there is no problem to swim into the Seine. But you know, there are sad spirits always are going away against the successful of these Olympic Games.
Anthony, and the continual backdrop to any kind of event now seems to be a pro-Palestine protest. There was one at the football yesterday. Israel played Mali.
Yes.
Some pro-Palestine protesters got into there. There were scuffles. They were holding up Palestine flags. And a French politician from the hard left said that the Israelis weren't even welcome in France. That's casting a sour note over proceedings too.
Yes, you are right. It's one of the main issues, I think, by now in the climate of these Olympic Games. You know, there is a left-hand parties in France which are very in favor of Palestinian people, and they are against the Israel state. And there is a lot of politics battle this year and this month, and there is a climate very, very hateful against Israel among the left-right politics parties. But I think that the securities and the official issues about the government about Israel and the Olympic Games will be all right. But you know, you can't prevent some incidents like flags, like little manifestations, but they are very few, I think. And I think when the Olympic Games will be there and in the main course, I think all these problems will be covered by the love and the applause of the public and the world, which is in city and ceremony never seen in the history of the Olympic Games.
OK, good. Well, the opening ceremony is tomorrow night. Let's hope it goes without event. Thanks very much for joining us, Anthony and Andre. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Now, before we go to the end of the hour, I want to get through some of your says, and then we've had hundreds and hundreds of them about the Manchester Airport police attack. Dave says this: they decided to attack the police, which could lead to any real danger. Who knows what weapons they could have had? The police must be in control by whatever means. Emily adds this: the kick was awful, but what force was used to break that policewoman's nose? Welcome back, I say, to 1980s policing. Criminals and those causing disorder have had it too soft for too long, and I fully support these officers, but let's wait to see the full video. There are two sides to every story. And Cassandra adds this: where is that video of the thugs assaulting the woman or breaking the policewoman's nose? These incidents came before the police's action on the floor of the airport. Let's see what actually happened. And Mel quickly adds this: let's get an interview with a female police officer with a broken nose and see what she has got to say to give it some balance. Now, a police officer's been suspended after that video, which showed a man being kicked as he lay on that floor. And a solicitor representing two of the men involved in the incident said the people who were allegedly assaulted are family members of a Greater Manchester police officer. That's a plot twist few saw coming. We'll have the full details on that story after this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. Now let's have your weather, and it's Alex Burkill.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. The relatively changeable feel to the weather is going to continue as we go through the end of the week. Yes, there'll be some dry, bright weather at times, but also something a bit wet to come too. The heavier rain that we've seen across southern parts due to a waving frontal system is now clearing away towards the east, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain across southern parts as we go through this evening, and plenty of showers across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of these will continue overnight. But for many, it is actually going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but still that relatively warm, muggy feel to things, with temperatures, especially in your towns and cities, not really dropping a huge amount. As we look through tomorrow morning then, plenty of showers from the start across parts of Scotland. These will be most frequent across western parts, and here they will be quite heavy at times, even as we go through the morning, and we're going to see more as we go through the afternoon. Eastern parts of Scotland starting the day largely dry and bright, and here it should stay mostly fine through large chunks of the day. Some showers feeding in across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, dry and brighter further east. 1 or 2 showers perhaps for Wales and southwest England, but the Midlands, East Anglia and southern southeastern parts should have a bright and fine start. As we go through the day, though, we are going to see a few more showers developing. They are still going to be quite hit and miss in nature, relatively scattered for many of us, so especially across England and Wales, towards the east and south in particular, largely dry, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England, quite a few showers, some heavy, some thundery, and temperatures likely to be up a little bit compared to today, with highs of around 24 or 25 Celsius, feeling warm in any sunshine. More showers to come, particularly towards the northwest as we go through tomorrow evening, a drier picture towards the south and southeast. More showers on Saturday, some of them are looking pretty heavy, but a ridge of high pressure is building, which brings a more settled, drier picture for Sunday. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M6 northbound in Staffordshire. 3 lanes closed for an accident between junction 16 Stoke-on-Trent and 17 for Sandbach. Slow for the M58 in Manchester. We got a lane closed for a broken down vehicle between junction 26, the Orrell interchange, and the A577 Orrell Road. Slow for the M1 southbound in Hertfordshire. It's partially blocked for an accident at junction 8, Hemel Hempstead. Slow for the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire. There's queues for an earlier accident between junction 13 Bedford and 12 for Flitwick in the roadworks area. Queue in traffic in Kent, firstly on the M25 clockwise due to an earlier accident between junction 5 for the M26 and the Clackett Lane services, and it's also slow anti-clockwise on the M25 in Kent up to the Dartford tunnels. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, a police officer has been suspended after a video of a violent arrest went viral on social media. Accusations of racism and protests followed, with only half of the picture emerging. Have the authorities once again bowed to the mob? And days after it was announced that all the asylum seekers will soon be moved out of RAF Wethersfield in Essex, locals are once again up in arms. This time it's emerged today that this site could instead be converted into a mega jail. I'll be joined by the head of a local campaign group who's blasted the decision as stupid. And Prince Harry, has been at it again. He's been moaning about the media. To the media. He's even claiming his war with the tabloids was a central piece in destroying his relationship with the rest of the royals and not his wife. And that's all coming between now and 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure to have your company. The story that's captivated you today has been that incident at Manchester Airport yesterday. The officer suspended, and dramatic breaking news in the last few minutes. 2 of the men arrested. Their lawyer has just released a statement claiming they have a family member in the Greater Manchester Police Force and that this is an example of police brutality. Get in touch with your views on that. So far, as I say, I've never seen the inbox this busy. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. That's the way to do it. But now's your headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, as you've been hearing, a police officer has been suspended from his duties after video emerged appearing to show someone being kicked during an altercation at Manchester Airport. Greater Manchester Police says 3 of its officers were seriously injured when they first of all attended to reports of an assault in the car park, which happened before the event seen in the video, which included a female officer suffering a broken nose. A solicitor representing 2 of the men involved says they're family members of a Greater Manchester police officer. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has now launched an investigation. Meanwhile, a man has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed British Army officer in Kent. 24-year-old Anthony Essan has been remanded in custody after appearing in court today. He was arrested near his home in Rochester 30 minutes after the violent attack. He's also been charged with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. He's back in court next month. That comes after Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who's in his 40s, was stabbed near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. He remains in hospital in a serious but stable condition. Now, the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick will stand for the leadership of the Conservative Party, promising to win back voters who switched to Reform UK. He's the 3rd Tory to throw their hat into the ring after James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat just last night. Mr Cleverly says he's best placed to unite the party after a crushing election defeat. But Tom Tugendhat says the Conservatives have lost trust after failing to deliver low taxes and immigration. The Prime Minister has been speaking today, saying offshore wind will soon power 20 million British homes as he launched the new state-owned GBNews. Speaking during a visit to an engineering plant in the northwest of England, Sir Keir Starmer said the firm's partnership with the Crown Estate would help turbocharge Britain's transition to clean energy.
Now there is a massive prize within our reach. And make no mistake, the race is on to get there. Until now, I feel like we've been sort of tying up our laces in the changing room. No more. I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race for clean energy. And why not? We've got the potential, we've got the ports, we've got the people, the skills, and now we've got a mission-driven government.
The NHS is urging blood donors to come forward amid an urgent shortage of certain blood types. The Health Service has issued an amber alert after national stocks of O-negative and O-positive blood types fell to unprecedented low levels. It's understood that the recent cyber attacks affecting London hospitals and more people missing appointments has contributed to the shortage. Hospitals are now being asked to restrict transfusions of O blood types to essential cases only. 2 Just Stop Oil activists have been found guilty of criminal damage after throwing tin soup over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers painting in 2022. Anna Holland and Phoebe Plummer, who are both 22, damaged the painting, which is on display at London's National Gallery, by throwing 2 tins of soup over the 1888 work, which is protected, incidentally, by a layer of glass. They then knelt before the painting and glued their hands to the wall. A 40-year-old man has become the first person to be charged under the new XL bully dog laws. Ashley Warren was charged over the death of Esther Warren, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs in Essex in February. It's the first case of its kind since new laws on owning XL bully dogs came into force this year. And the first trailer for a new film about one of the world's most influential musicians has just arrived.
We got a feeling we were getting a glimpse of the future.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son?
And it is, of course, the story of Bob Dylan, played by actor Timothée Chalamet. Starting with his arrival in New York and the early 60s, the actor consulting Austin Butler, who recently played Elvis Presley, for advice on transforming himself for the role, which features all his own singing. A Complete Unknown is the name of the film, expected to hit cinemas later this year. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in half an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Polly. Now we start with the fallout from the incident where a police officer kicked a man in the head as he lay on the floor, and a warning that some viewers might find the following images distressing. Greater Manchester Police has suspended a firearms officer after these shocking scenes, which is said to have happened at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. Last night, an estimated 200 people protested outside Rochdale Police Station, shouting "Shame on you," and some even shouting "Allah Akbar." Well, I'm joined now by GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So the images have gone viral, gone around the world, millions of views. The officer has been suspended, but of course we've been saying all day, Mark White, what we know so far only paints a part of the picture. Hundreds and hundreds of messages coming into us here at GB News today saying, what about the backstory? What about the police officers who were assaulted? Is that footage out there? And what is the reason that we got to this incident in the first place? Mark White, what can you tell us?
Well, this viral video doesn't even paint half the story. It's the very end portion of what was a violent altercation in which the police say 3 of their officers were knocked to the ground and violently assaulted, including one police female officer who was smashed in the face and suffered a broken nose. The officers attending that scene were listening to their colleagues over the radio screaming for assistance on the open radio system that they have in the event of a distress call. They press a button and that allows their colleagues to hear everything that is going on. So they heard that. The backup officers arrive on scene, and the video that we've been watching is really the moments after those backup officers arrive and try to gain control of a scene which has been very violent, in which, as I say, it said that those officers were assaulted. We've obtained another piece of that viral video, which is just a few seconds before the incident where the chap is on the ground, just after some of those back-up support officers arrive in this underground car park looking for that suspect, and the suspects are being pointed out to them by one of the officers who's just been assaulted. Here's a look at that clip.
You're on camera. You're on camera. No, we are we're normal civilians. No. We have not done nothing. We have not done nothing. Look, we have not done nothing. We're just recording. I can't go home. Your son is getting locked up. No, what?
Well, you can hear those people protesting their innocence, but really when armed officers are arriving on the scene knowing that colleagues have been assaulted and there are violent individuals to be detained, they just want to detain them, to get them down to the ground, to get them handcuffed, to end the ongoing threat. They can argue their case at a later date. The police will tell you, if you want to avoid a violent confrontation, then comply with their orders when they detain you, when they place you under arrest. Now, 2 of those 4 suspects who were arrested under charges of affray and assaulting members of the police have now been released from hospital. We've heard in the last hour one lawyer say that his client has a cyst on the brain, apparently, after some kind of scan was taken at hospital. And in another clip that's been released on social media, a lawyer is saying how they are going to go to the police station to lodge a formal complaint. Let's take a listen to that.
They were released not long ago from Cheadle police station. They then had to make their own way to the hospital. But in reality, because they've had head injuries, it was the police duty to take them to a hospital. But nevertheless, they made their own way. And now I've documented their injuries, and we are headed to Rochdale police station to make a formal complaint of assault and wounding.
So, of course, all eyes will be on what happens this evening. There are calls for more protests in Rochdale outside the main police station there. It is the hope, of course, of Greater Manchester Police that calmer heads will prevail. But given what happened in Leeds just a week ago, there is absolutely real concern of the potential for more violence.
And indeed, Mark White, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, I think, by the way, he's been excellent during this. He was saying this is not a clear-cut situation. Don't exploit it for political purposes. One of the gentlemen calling for those protests last night at Rochdale Police Station, Jack Khan, he's previously stood as a Workers' Party candidate, one of George Galloway's men. But can I ask you, Mark White, so many people are messaging in here to GB News asking about what's the procedural process now of that earlier footage, of that body cam evidence, perhaps CCTV within the airport that might tell us the full picture of how we reached this moment where things escalated. Will that be made public anytime soon, do you think, Mark White?
Well, not necessarily anytime soon, but the hope is at some stage we will get to see, once proceedings in the courts and by this independent investigation have concluded, we'll get to see just what happened in the minutes before those officers arrived to take control of the situation. Because yes, there's body-worn video camera footage from the officers that arrived to take control of the situation, but also from the officers that were subject to that assault in the minutes beforehand. So lots of CCTV, as always, around any airport environment. And in terms of the situation with regard to the viral video, well, as we've said, it shows the very end of that process. We'll have to ask those that posted these videos why they've only posted the very end and not the few minutes before when those officers were allegedly being assaulted. If that video exists, it would be nice if they were perhaps to post them.
And Mark White, the lawyer, has released a statement a short while ago, now claiming this was an example of police brutality. And that's the kind of language, Mark White, that is really going to antagonise matters on the ground. And as you said, looking ahead to this evening, more protests planned in Rochdale. Mark White, this incident is far from over.
Well, yes, and not just some claiming it's a clear-cut case of police brutality, but others claiming that it has racial overtones, that these were white officers involved in detaining men of Pakistani heritage. But the people that are posting that neglect perhaps or omit from their outrage that those men of Pakistani heritage are also accused of assaulting those same white police officers.
OK, Mark White, excellent summary as ever. Thank you very much for joining us here on GB News. Now, joining me now is the activist and the Labour Party advocate, Aisha Ali Khan. Welcome to the show, Ms Ali Khan. So can I just talk to you about Andy Burnham's made a statement. I think Andy Burnham has been excellent in this. He said that this is not a clear-cut situation. Obviously, there is a lot of evidence we don't have our eyes or our hands on yet, which might paint a very different picture. And he then warns, don't exploit this for political purposes. May I ask you about what you think he meant there? Because we mentioned a moment ago Jack Khan, the gentleman calling for that protest outside Rochdale police station last night, previously stood as a candidate for the Workers' Party of Britain. That, of course, is George Galloway's mob. Do you reckon that this is now taking on an organised, joined-up political aspect?
I think there is a danger, and I agree with Andy Burnham, that if we were to go down the route of using this incident and exploiting it to cause further divisions amongst the communities, it's not going to be helpful. I don't agree with it whatsoever. I think, like you've just mentioned, Martin, we don't know the full story. We don't know what set off the police officers. Obviously, there are lots and lots of different stories that have come about. I've seen text messages where the people involved, the young Pakistani men, have said that their mum was pushed and she was attacked and they retaliated. Other versions of events, such as obviously the police official version of events, has come out, and they've accused some of these men, of attacking 3 police officers and breaking 1 female police officer's nose. So we don't know, and I'm really looking forward to watching footage, whether it's from the body cam footage or whether it's from the CCTV cameras that obviously all over Manchester Airport, to find out what had happened in the lead up. For me, it's important not to let this escalate, and I completely agree that there are lots and lots of different parties that are just waiting to pounce and to politicise and maximise the sort of damage something like this could cause to community relations and community cohesion. So I do think we'll take a step back. Let's take the heat out of the situation. We've already had Richard Tice, the Reform leader, as well, saying that he felt reassured with the level of violence that was shown. That isn't helpful either. You've had people, obviously from the Workers' Party, say we're going to, protest, and it's going to be something you've never seen before. That for me is also worrisome, because the majority of Muslims, Pakistani Muslims like myself, living in the UK, we don't want to see race riots. We don't want to see more of this division, us and them. This for us is really worrying. And what's happened yesterday should not have happened. As a Pakistani Muslim mother, I travel a lot, by the way. I am constantly flying, I'm constantly travelling, and oftentimes I will go with my son, who has a beard, or my nephews, who don't, but they're obviously the Pakistani boys as well. And the footage that was shown, various different footage, not just 1 or 2 videos. There was countless. It's about 7 or 8 videos now showing different angles of what happened. But every single one of them shows the police, let's be honest, being brutal, kicking, stamping.
Hang on. You've yourself said that there is a previous incident. The Greater Manchester Police have been abundantly clear on the fact that officers were assaulted, including a woman who's had her nose broken. That's how the incident started. So to say that they were picked on because they were Muslim lads or because they were Pakistani doesn't doesn't weigh up against the body of evidence if an incident occurred and we only saw the tail end of it. Do you think it's helpful, as happened with the lawyer saying this is institutional racism, it's police brutality? Do you think that's helpful? Because you said about Richard Tice inflaming things, but that kind of thing, that inflames things too. That's not linking people together and calling for calm. It's throwing petrol on the fire.
No, absolutely, Martin. I'm talking about the way I feel, the way I'm worried as a Muslim woman, a Pakistani woman who travels and obviously travels with her family members as well. So I feel concerned because this could easily have been a young lad and not necessarily involved in violence, like we've just mentioned about the statement that the police have put out where a policewoman was assaulted. Anybody that's travelling might say the wrong thing, might make the wrong comments. It can escalate so quickly, and for them then to worry about could this then mean that they're going to get attacked in this way? Could this mean that they're going to get tasered and then kicked to the face? As a Pakistani woman,
I must interject. People don't randomly get attacked by the police in Britain. You know, we're not a third world country. This event yesterday wasn't a random attack by the police who just decided to wade into a bunch of British Muslims. It was precipitated by an incident which we don't know the full details of yet. And also, you know, people get taken down or taken on or confronted by the police in airports, no matter what their ethnic background. If you're a white bloke who's had too much to drink and you're causing trouble, you probably shouldn't be doing that either if you're causing trouble. So I'm just putting it to you again. Do you think it's actually helpful to imply that British Muslims are specifically on the receiving end of hostility or poor treatment by the authorities anywhere? Is that helpful?
Look, Martin, I'm talking about in case there was something that had happened and for it to escalate into violence, the kind of violence we've seen yesterday. Obviously, the first thing for me would be to ensure that people, that my family members, myself, behave in a completely appropriate way.
Don't get involved in violence.
Not to get involved in violence, not to harm anybody, not to inflict violence. And that's really, for those of you that know me, know that I'm a great advocate of a peaceful approach. I've been involved, obviously, lots over the years, lots and lots of other incidents as well. I work in a school, I work in a special needs school where everything could just escalate really quickly. Chairs are being thrown, tables are being flung. So for me, it's really important to always use a calm, measured attitude, a measured voice, a measured persona. And a lot of the footage yesterday, there were a lot of people shouting. There was a lot of noise. There was a lot of anger, but also a lot of anguish as well. There was lots of screaming, and that would not have helped the situation. Anyway, my point is that obviously we've seen a police officer, we've seen a young Pakistani boy, a young man, lying on the ground, his hands are to his side, and then he's still being kicked in the head, he's still being kicked in the face and stamped upon. And that, for me, is the issue. It was, for me, far too excessive violence, far too excessive force being used to subdue somebody who's already on the ground. Now, going back to the point that I know you've made, and you've made it really well as well, we don't want certain parties to come forward and try to exploit the situation. We don't want people to maximise what's happened yesterday, on Tuesday, for their own political gain, because that would not serve anybody. And the only thing that would happen is that the Pakistani community would become a pawn in these people's, whether it's the Workers' Party or whether it's Reform, we would become a pawn in their political games and political manoeuvrings, which is completely unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. And the most important thing is lay the blame where it should be, whether it's with these young men and the police that are obviously involved, we could see in the footage, actually hold them to account. And if it means going to court and if it means being charged, yeah, absolutely, I will support a process, a fair, just legal process, absolutely. But my warning, and I've been on the phone and I've seen lots of footage and lots of messages as well. Let's not get too hot-headed. What's happened. Let's take the heat out. Let's calm down and let's have a proper communication about this to make sure it doesn't happen again. Whether it's these Pakistani men getting involved in a violent situation, or whether it's the retaliation or the response by the police that were then called to the situation afterwards.
Aisha Ali Khan, thank you for coming on the show and thank you for being a cool and calm voice. Just like Andy Burnham, perhaps some of the Muslim community leaders in Rochdale could learn from that and actually come forward. And rather than saying, let's have conflict tonight, let's have some calm in the area, I think that would be a good idea. They got lots more on that story on our website. And thanks to you, GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got breaking news and all the brilliant analysis you've come to expect from us here at GB News. Now, coming up just days after it was announced that all the asylum seekers will soon be moved out of RAF Wethersfield and Essex, locals are once again up in arms because it's emerged today that the site could instead be converted into one of Sir Keir Starmer's mega jails. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:28. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. As I said earlier, I've never seen the GB News inbox this busy. Your says are absolutely flying in on this topic of the suspended officer from Manchester Airport. Let's read through a few of them now. Peter says this: actions have consequences. If you attack the police or anyone else, then don't expect to be treated with a softly approach. Senior Greater Manchester police officers need to grow some and get rid of their snowflake approach to policing. Well, Peter, they did do that, and one officer has now been suspended. Jess adds this: police getting tough on them, on all these people who mess with the police is long overdue. These officers have my support. Bernard adds this: So it seems that two of these boys have a family member in the force, so how would they like it if their family member had his or her nose broken? And secondly, they should know better than to resist arrest. That's not the excuse they think it is. Case closed. And Jane has this: I think the police officer is at fault for excessive force. Well, he has been suspended pending a full inquiry. And quickly, Emily adds this: the kick was awful, but what force was used to break the policewoman's nose first? And just before we head to the news, Cassandra adds this: where is the video of the thugs assaulting the woman or breaking the policewoman's nose? These incidents came before the police's action on the floor of the airport. Let's see what actually happened. So, and quickly from Mel. Mel says this: let's get an interview with the female police officer with a broken nose and see what she has to say to get some balance. Now, there's loads to talk about still on this story. Loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. 6 o'clock, beg your pardon. But let's go to your news headlines now with Polly Middlehurst.
The top stories this hour: a police officer has been suspended from duty after video emerged appearing to show a person being kicked following police being assaulted at Manchester Airport. Greater Manchester Police says 3 of its officers were seriously injured when they attended to reports of an assault in the airport car park, which happened before the event seen in the video, which included a female officer suffering a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has now launched an investigation. The Prime Minister says he understands concern over the footage, and the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, who's met the Home Secretary, has appealed for calm. The jury in the trial of Hassan Jangur, who's accused of murdering Good Samaritan Chris Marriott, has been discharged after failing to reach any verdicts. Mr. Marriott had been out for a post-Christmas walk with his wife and 2 young children when he was run over while coming to the aid of a stranger in the street. And a man has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed army officer in Kent. 24-year-old Anthony Essent was arrested near his home in Rochester just 30 minutes after the violent attack. It's after Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who's in his 40s, was stabbed near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. He remains in hospital in a serious but stable condition. And the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, will stand for the leadership of the Conservative Party, promising to win back voters who switched to Reform UK. He's the 3rd Conservative to throw his hat into the ring, after James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Mr Cleverly says he's best placed to unite the party after last month's election defeat. But Tom Tugendhat says the Conservatives have lost trust after failing to deliver on lower taxes and lower immigration. And a 40-year-old man has become the first person to be charged under new XL bully laws. Ashley Warren was charged over the death of Esther Martin, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs in Essex in February. It's the first case of its kind since new laws on owning XL bully dogs came into force this year. Those are your latest news headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in half an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
A quick snapshot of today's markets for you, and the pound buying you $1.2877 and 1.1859 euros. The price of gold is £1,833.15 an ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed for the day today at 8,186 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Polly. Now, hundreds of migrants have been staying at a former RAF base in the Essex village of Wethersfield, despite a concerted campaign by locals. And now, just days after it was announced that all the asylum seekers will move out, it's being reported that the site could be turned into a massive prison. Well, joining me now is the chair of the Fields Association in Wethersfield, Alan Mackenzie. Alan, welcome to the show. Must have been a bittersweet week for the residents of Wethersfield. At the start of the week, it seems to be the direction of travel that it would no longer, this RAF site, house asylum seekers. And then the very next day, you learn it could instead be a mega prison hosting 1,700 prisoners. What's your take on this development?
Well, I've commented that an asylum centre was a ridiculous idea for Wethersfield Air Base, and that proved to be the case. I think everybody in the country is by now aware that the government, the previous government, estimated set-up costs of £5 million there, and it ended up at £49 million, something that all the residents told the Home Office beforehand that it was an inappropriate site and it was going to be very difficult to host an asylum centre there. We are hopeful that the new government takes stock of its senses, and the idea that the Ministry of Justice had over 2 years ago about building 2 mega prisons there will be binned, because it's a stupid idea. It's such a remote location that it may well just be purely impossible to get the huge precast concrete blocks which these new mega prisons are constructed with through some of the rural road networks. There are only 3 routes in. One's Finchingfield Bridge, which has got was about to get a 7.5 ton weight limit and so narrow lorries get craned off it on occasions. Another is Sybil Headingham, where the Home Office tried to get 3 wide loads of porter cabins through, got stuck and had to go home. And the other is direct through Braintree, up through Shalford and into Wethersfield, the village itself, which has got an almost impossible turn into it right before a primary school. The fact is, the Ministry of having spent about 2 years of studies looking at the possibility for Wethersfield, never got round to actually looking to see whether construction traffic could physically make it to the site. It is almost an impossibility for it. Probably is impossible, and they haven't done it properly. I'm just hoping, and I think residents are hoping, that this government is more competent than the last one in terms of looking at these sorts of sites for prisons or any other large infrastructure.
Now, Alan Mackenzie, of course, the government would say in response to all of that, yeah, we hear what you're saying, but our prison system is full. There are only like 700 places left. We must have new prisons, and it'd be far cheaper to convert Wethersfield than it would be to build a new prison. What would you say to them if they just called you NIMBYs?
Oh, we've had that originally, and we approached it. It's nothing to do with NIMBYism. It's to do with policies of government. If you look at the criteria for where the MOJ wants to site prisons, hardly any of that criteria fit the bill in terms of Wethersfield. If you're talking about rehabilitation, which this new government is talking about, and with the appointment of James Timpson as Prisons Minister, who was chair of the Prisons Reforms Trust, who we agree with a lot of their beliefs about where prisons should be sited, what they should be offering, what sort of size they should be, then we are hopeful that this government is not going to be looking at somewhere like Wethersfield, which doesn't fit any of those criteria for putting up a prison. There is a new prisons programme already in place, the last one of which, 6 prisons to be built, the last one of which to get through planning permission is up in Chorley in Lancashire. That is waiting for the government to decide on whether that's going to go ahead or not. If it does go ahead, they are the 6 new prisons that were planned to be built by the previous government anyway, and meets the target for that new prisons programme. They don't need any more new prisons.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thanks for giving an impassioned defence. Your fight continues. That's the chair of the Fields Association in Wethersfield, Alan Mackenzie. Thanks for joining us on the show. And in response to that, the Ministry of Justice has said we are cognizant that the Home Office plans to use parts of the Wethersfield site for the foreseeable future, and we do not anticipate progressing a prison scheme whilst they have a presence on the site. However, we will continue to maintain an interest in Wethersfield as part of our long-term pipeline strategy. Now, if you want to get in touch with us here at GB News, simply go to gbnews.com/your say. Still time to have your say. And I'll read out your comments, the best of them, before the end of the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. The relatively changeable feel to the weather is going to continue as we go through the end of the week. Yes, there'll be some dry, bright weather at times, but also something a bit wet to come too. The heavier rain that we've seen across southern parts due to a waving frontal system is now clearing away towards the east, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain across southern parts as we go through this evening, and plenty of showers across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of these will continue overnight. But for many, it is actually going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but still that relatively warm, muggy feel to things, with temperatures, especially in your towns and cities, not really dropping a huge amount. As we look through tomorrow morning then, plenty of showers from the start across parts of Scotland. These will be most frequent across western parts, and here they will be quite heavy at times, even as we go through the morning, and we're going to see more as we go through the afternoon. Eastern parts of Scotland starting the day largely dry and bright, and here it should stay mostly fine through large chunks of the day. Some showers feeding in across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, dry and brighter further east. 1 or 2 showers perhaps for Wales and southwest England, but the Midlands, East Anglia and southern southeastern parts should have a bright and fine start. As we go through the day, though, we are going to see a few more showers developing. They are still going to be quite hit and miss in nature, relatively scattered for many of us, so especially across England and Wales, towards the east and south in particular, largely dry, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England, quite a few showers, some heavy, some thundery, and temperatures likely to be up a little bit compared to today, with highs of around 24 or 25 Celsius, feeling warm in any sunshine. More showers to come, particularly towards the northwest as we go through tomorrow evening, a drier picture towards the south and southeast. More showers on Saturday, some of them are looking pretty heavy, but a ridge of high pressure is building, which brings a more settled, drier picture for Sunday. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Afternoon, I'm Gary King. In Kent, clockwise M25 looking busy after an earlier accident between junction 5 at the M26 and Clackett Lane services. In Essex, southbound M11 looking busy after an earlier breakdown between junction 9 at Saffron Walden and 8 at Bishop Stortford. Hertfordshire, southbound M1 is partly blocked, delays building after an accident around junction 8 at Hemel Hempstead. In Bedfordshire, the southbound M1 looking busy after an earlier accident between junction 13 at Bedford and 12 at Flitwick. In Leicestershire, on the northbound M1, there are 2 lanes closed and delays. It's all following a broken down lorry around junction 24 at Nottingham South. And in Staffordshire, the northbound M6, 3 lanes closed, long delays after an accident just around junction 16 at Stoke-on-Trent. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. 5:42. We're on the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has been talking about one of his government's flagship policies today, and the good news for King Charles is it's going to make him a right royal load of money, because the Prime Minister has promised that Great British Energy will work with the monarch's property firm to help speed up the build of offshore wind farms. And of course, the Crown Estate owns the vast majority of Britain's seabed, which stretches up to 12 nautical miles from the mainland. Sir Keir says Great British Energy will bring down energy bills for good. And I'm now joined by Simon Francis, who's a campaigner at the End Fuel Poverty Coalition. Simon, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your patience. We had to go to Kamala Harris earlier on. So cheap energy for everybody. What's not to like? But is this the answer?
Well, there's certainly a lot to welcome in GB Energy in terms of the move towards more renewables. That will bring down energy bills in the long run. There's also some really important stuff in there about community energy. The more we can generate energy close to communities with their consent, then the cheaper it's going to be, the less pipes we're going to need and wires to carry it around the place. So there is a lot of really interesting stuff in the proposals. However, there are some concerns that we still feel the government needs to address. Firstly, we need to be get a guarantee that the energy that is generated by these offshore plants is going to be passed through to consumers at cost price. We're not just handing profits over to other people unnecessarily. We also, though, need to see a commitment that if there's infrastructure investment needed to upgrade the grid in order to get the electricity from these sites to our houses, but that is also paid for through an investment model. Isn't just added to standing charges, because at the moment that the rules say that's what would happen. So we need to see changes to the rules to enable this project really to fly.
And Clive, Simon, don't you think there's a bitter irony in the fact that one of the great beneficiaries of this plan will be the King? I mean, Clive Lewis could barely even bring himself to swear allegiance to the King. And the fact of the matter is, the land that these turbines will go on, Simon Francis, is owned by the Crown Estate. And we saw the King's profits double last year to over £1 billion. And he's making his money from wind farms. No surprises that King Charles is such a fan. It's making him an absolute packet. But it's great the King's getting rich. But how do we know that our bills are going to come down? We were told £300 before the end of this Parliament. In actual fact, last week, Simon Francis, we were told our bills were going up by £190.
Well, and we've seen earlier this week, of course, profits from other energy firms. We don't want the King just to be added into that list of energy firms and companies that are making billions and billions of pounds of profit every single year at our expense. And we do need to see action to bring down energy bills. This will help in the long run. But in order to do that, we're probably going to need to see market reform. And we also need to see steps to bring down bills this winter. I mentioned standing charges. They need to be reformed. We need to see help for households who are going to struggle through this winter as well, and they won't be helped by this expansion at the moment. So there is a lot of work for this government still to do, both in terms of the logistics around this, the reforms that need to go in to make this really pay off for consumers, and of course in terms of helping people who are struggling from these record energy prices that are going to go up again in October.
Simon Francis, thank you for your opinion. Superb stuff. Campaigner at End Fuel Poverty Coalition. Thank you very much. But what happens when the wind stops? We haven't got batteries big enough to power towns. Anyway, I digress, because Prince Harry, well, he's been at it again. He's been moaning about the media, to the media. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
No, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helped people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to be...
Where does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless, and even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:49, the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, the Duke of Sussex has claimed his determination to fight the tabloids was a central piece in destroying his relationship with his family. Prince Harry said he wished his family had joined him in his campaign in the wake of the phone hacking scandal. He was speaking to ITV on his documentary called Tabloids on Trial.
I think everything that's played out has shown people what the truth of the matter is. For me, the mission continues, but it's caused, as you say, part of a rift.
Here we go again. Well, I can now speak with royal commentator, the legend, Michael Cole. Michael, always an absolute delight. So here we go. The global publicity tour continues. Prince Harry moaning about the media in the media. Tell us more.
Well, it wouldn't be Prince Harry without an immediate swipe at his older brother, and it's not a very subtle one. Prince Harry said it would be nice if members of his family had joined him in his mission, and that's the word he used, we just heard him say it, his mission against the tabloid press. This is obviously a reference to the fact that Prince William settled with the news group, the publishers of The Sun and the now defunct News of the World, settled apparently a huge sum of money, allegedly, for past invasions of his privacy, in contrast to his brother, who is the Prince of Litigation, who wants to take on all the newspaper groups in this country, one by one. Of course, it's not only Prince William who settled with News Corp. Hugh Grant, who is in the film, he has settled with newspaper groups, and even lesser people, Martin, have settled with News Corp, including myself. I was hacked. I was one of the people who was hacked. It was unpleasant, but nobody died. I settled for a modest sum in damages and an apology, which is what I wanted from the top of News Group. And they said that they were very sorry about it and they would never do it again. And I accepted that apology because I believe that it's very important to have a free and unfettered press, particularly in this country without a written constitution. And the press, time after time, like our television stations, hold the people in the highest offices to account when there is wrongdoing. And I applaud that. But Prince Harry sees it as his mission to take on the press, and he'll be back in the courts in the new year against News Corp and against associated newspapers. Prince Harry is on firmer ground when he says that his mother did believe that she was being hacked, and that is true. She changed her mobile telephone regularly, almost as often as she changed her pair of shoes, and she had her apartment swept for bugs. I actually met the man who actually used to do it for her. She trusted him implicitly, and she didn't only believe it was the press who was listening into her private conversations.
And Michael, he blames the media, he blames the tabloid ongoing scandal for the rift with his family, yet he pursues with it. And also he doesn't acknowledge the fact that maybe the rift in the family could be caused by his missus.
Well, I think that's true. He's done enough. He's said enough. He's written books. He's appeared in television programs. He said some cruel and unkind things. not only about his brother, but about his sister-in-law, who was very close to him at one stage, and of course about the king and Camilla, who apparently doesn't want to be in the same room with him, or perhaps it's the other way round. So he has spread plenty of malice in the past, and actions have consequences, and this has all come home to hurt him. And I'm quite sure he misses this country. You know, this is the day they got married. Could they have been more warmly welcomed to this country? The crowds in Windsor Great Park, 20 deep, universally, very rarely, every single newspaper welcomed her as a breath of fresh air. She could not have been more welcome in this country. It's such a sadness to see how it's all gone. But he's in self-imposed exile in California. He comes here to appear in Her Majesty.
Michael, I'm afraid I'm going to have to hack you off and interject, but it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, that's all from me for now, but of course, Jubes & Co. is up next. Don't forget to join from 6 a.m. tomorrow. It's Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Then it's Britain's Newsroom at 9:30 and Tom and Emily with Good Afternoon Britain from midday. My mush, we're back at 3. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. Now, it's your weather with Alex Berger. Have a fantastic evening.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. The relatively changeable feel to the weather is going to continue as we go through the end of the week. Yes, there'll be some dry, bright weather at times, but also something a bit wet to come too. The heavier rain that we've seen across southern parts due to a waving frontal system is now clearing away towards the east, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain across southern parts as we go through this evening, and plenty of showers across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of these will continue overnight. But for many, it is actually going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but still that relatively warm, muggy feel to things, with temperatures, especially in your towns and cities, not really dropping a huge amount. As we look through tomorrow morning then, plenty of showers from the start across parts of Scotland. These will be most frequent across western parts, and here they will be quite heavy at times, even as we go through the morning, and we're going to see more as we go through the afternoon. Eastern parts of Scotland starting the day largely dry and bright, and here it should stay mostly fine through large chunks of the day. Some showers feeding in across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, dry and brighter further east. 1 or 2 showers perhaps for Wales and southwest England, but the Midlands, East Anglia and southern southeastern parts should have a bright and fine start. As we go through the day, though, we are going to see a few more showers developing. They are still going to be quite hit and miss in nature, relatively scattered for many of us, so especially across England and Wales, towards the east and south in particular, largely dry, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England, quite a few showers, some heavy, some thundery, and temperatures likely to be up a little bit compared to today, with highs of around 24 or 25 Celsius, feeling warm in any sunshine. More showers to come, particularly towards the northwest as we go through tomorrow evening, a drier picture towards the south and southeast. More showers on Saturday, some of them are looking pretty heavy, but a ridge of high pressure is building, which brings a more settled, drier picture for Sunday. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King. In Buckinghamshire, the clockwise M25. Long delays at the moment after an earlier accident just before junction 16 at the M40. Delays though all the way back towards junction 13 at Staines. In Bedfordshire, southbound M1 looking slow after an earlier accident between junction 13 at Bedford and 12 at Flitwick. Northbound M1 through Derbyshire looking slow due to an earlier breakdown between junction 25 at Nottingham and Trowse services. In the West Midlands, the southbound M6, there's a lane close and delays after a breakdown around junction 10 at Wolverhampton. And in Staffordshire, the northbound M6, long delay still after an earlier accident. It's northbound between junction 16 at Stoke-on-Trent and junction 17 at Sandbach. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I won £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co. Coming up tonight, the outrage over the Manchester airport assault continues. I can tell you now, protests are planned for tonight. Many people absolutely furious about what has gone down. So where are you on this issue? Also, a massive amount of young people apparently tend to reform in the last election. What do you make to that? And you won't be spending a penny for long, because 1 and 2p pieces will not be minted in the coming years. Is this a problem, or is it just a shape of things to come? And call me a prude, right? But I do not think that people need to be parading their tickle-tackle on primetime television. A new programme has been commissioned for fully naked dating on the television. I mean, what is happening when it comes to our moral compass in society? Do we really need stuff like this on the box? Your thoughts? All of that and more, but first, the 6 o'clock news.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that a police officer has been suspended from duty after video emerged online appearing to show someone being kicked after an altercation at Manchester Airport. Greater Manchester Police say 3 of its officers were seriously injured when they attended to reports of an assault in the car park, which happened before the event seen in the video. A female police officer suffered a broken nose in that altercation. Since then, a solicitor representing 2 of the men involved say they're family members of a Greater Manchester police officer. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog is now investigating. Meanwhile, a man has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed army officer in Kent. 24-year-old Anthony Essen has been remanded in custody after appearing in court today. He was arrested near his home in Rochester just 30 minutes after the violent attack. He's also been charged with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. He'll be back in court next month. It's after Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, who's in his 40s, was stabbed near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. He remains in hospital in a serious but stable condition. The former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick says he's going to stand for the leadership of the Conservative Party, promising to win back voters who switched over to Reform UK. He's the third Conservative to throw his hat into the ring after James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Mr Cleverly says he's best placed to unite the party after a crushing election defeat for the Conservatives. But Tom Tugendhat says the Conservatives have lost trust after failing to deliver on lower taxes and lower immigration. The Prime Minister said today offshore wind will soon power 20 million British homes as he launched the new state-owned GB Energy company. Speaking during a visit to an engineering plant in the northwest of England, Sir Keir Starmer said the firm's partnership with the Crown Estate would help turbocharge Britain's transition to clean energy.
Now there is a massive prize within our reach. And make no mistake, the race is on to get there. Until now, I feel like we've been sort of tying up our laces in the changing room. No more. I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race for clean energy. And why not? We've got the potential, we've got the ports, we've got the people, the skills, and now we've got a mission-driven government.
Prime Minister. Now, the NHS is urging blood donors to come forward amid an urgent shortage of certain blood types. The Health Service has issued, in fact, an amber alert now after national stocks of ordinary negative and ordinary positive blood types fell to unprecedented low levels. It's understood that the recent cyber attacks affecting London hospitals and more people missing appointments has contributed to the shortage. Hospitals are being asked to restrict transfusions of O blood type to essential cases only. Now, 2 Just Stop Oil activists have been found guilty of criminal damage after throwing tin soup over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers painting back in 2022. Anna Holland and Phoebe Plummer, who are both 22, damaged the painting, which is on display at London's National Gallery. They threw tins of soup over the 1888 artwork, which is incidentally protected by a thin layer of glass, before kneeling down in front of it and gluing their hands to the wall. The 40-year-old man has become the first person to be charged under new XL bully dog laws. Ashley Warren was charged over the death of Esther Martin, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs in Essex in February. It's the first case of its kind since new laws on owning XL bully dogs came into force this year. And entertainment news to end on. The first trailer for a new film about one of the world's most influential musicians has just dropped. Take a listen.
We got a feeling we were getting a glimpse of the future.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son?
And in case you hadn't guessed it, the film tells the story of Bob Dylan. He's played by Timothée Chalamet, starting with his arrival in New York and going right through to the early 1960s. The actor consulted his friend Austin Butler, who recently played Elvis Presley, for advice on transforming himself for the role, which features all his own singing. It's called A Complete Unknown. It's expected to hit cinemas later this year. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Polly. I always smile when I watch some of those headlines. You know, if I was in charge of this country, those Just Stop Oil people, they'd still be attached to that wall now. If you want to go around gluing yourself to different things, leave them there. That's what I say. Anyway, look, I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and the education consultant, Tom Buick. Good evening. Welcome back to Birth of You.
Yeah, hi.
I always say that with a bit of a fingers crossed when it comes to you, because I think, what's going to come out of his mouth tonight? What are we in for tonight, everyone? There's a lot I want to discuss with you at home this evening. You know the drill. You can get in touch with us all the usual ways. gbnews.com/yoursay is how you can reach us on the website. gbviews@gbnews.com if email is more your thing. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me at GBnews, wherever you are. Don't forget as well, I forget to always mention this, you can listen to us on the radio. So if you're desperate to go out, worry not.
not take me with you, but wherever you are, you're very welcome tonight. But look, let's get stuck straight into the top story. We touched upon this yesterday, that video that went viral of the police officer and the altercation over at Manchester Airport. Now, I've got to say, Greater Manchester Police have confirmed now that an officer has been removed from all duties following a thorough review of further information. Look, that's the kind of video that's on the screen right now. By now, most of you, I am sure, will have seen it. But let me cross live to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Bring our viewers up to speed with the latest on this situation.
Well, that video that you've been showing, of course, that viral video, it rarely shows the full extent of the altercation that was going on here. That is at the very end of what was, according to the police, a very violent incident in which 3 police officers were injured and required hospital treatment, including a female officer who was smashed in the face and suffered a broken nose. And the point of the video, when it's shot and posted on social media, is the point where those backup officers arrive to help their colleagues who've been assaulted. And yes, of course, it is violent in nature. That is officers pushing forward to deal with a perceived threat. And really, it's all about proportionality here. Is the officer who kicked that man in the head that's lying down there, did he overstep the mark? Was it proportionate to the threat that existed, or indeed the threat that this officer perceived? Well, in terms of what the officers arriving on the scene perceived, they were hearing reports, distress calls from their assistants, from their colleagues calling for assistance. Their colleagues will have been on what they call open talkback. You push a panic button and that opens your microphone so that everybody can hear you for a period of time. They'll have heard their officers screaming, being attacked, requiring assistance. They're on scene. They know that these are armed colleagues. They don't know who's been attacking them, just what the potential threat is that's there, only that their officers and colleagues are being attacked. They try to take control of the situation, which, yes, is violent, but that's what the police do when they're in a situation of trying to take control, to bring people to the ground, to ensure that they're handcuffed and pose no further threat. It will be up to an independent investigation, looking at all the body-worn video, not just that very end sequence of a minute or so of material that someone has chosen to release that doesn't show what happened in the minutes before then when those officers were being assaulted. But those body-worn video cameras from the officers that were assaulted, for the officers that attended to help their colleagues, CCTV, eyewitness interviews as well, that it will form a fuller picture to assess whether this officer was in the wrong or not.
And what about the guys then? Because there were people that were taken to the police station. There were protests overnight at the police station. What's happened with those people?
Well, 4 people were arrested for affray and also for assault on emergency service workers. That is related to what police say were attacks on those 3 police officers who required hospital treatment. At least 2 of them have subsequently been released. We've heard statements from lawyers suggesting that one has had a scan which has revealed a cyst on the brain, but no further confirmation than that, just that word from those lawyers. And yes, you're right, Michelle, there was a protest at Rochdale Police Station last night. There are those in that community up in Rochdale who are calling for further protests this evening. It is the hope that they will remain peaceful, but it is of concern to policing management that, having just seen what happened in Leeds just over a week ago, that there is the potential for disorder and the hope that it just remains peaceful.
Just correct me if I'm wrong before I let you go. Some of these people that were congregating outside of that police station, weren't they like demanding the release of these people essentially, or else? Or am I misinterpreting that?
They had all kinds of demands and all kinds of accusations about racist policing and police brutality. These people have been released because they've effectively been interviewed and questioned at some point. They may be charged and facing prosecution. That's part of the normal process, not the police giving in to the demands of the mob.
Interesting. Mark White, thank you very much for that. Kelvin McKenzie, what do you make to it all?
Well, I feel sorry, very much sorry for the lady who ended up with the police officer, the woman police officer who ended up with a broken nose. When people are charged, when people are arrested for a fray, that is a very serious charge involving violence, organised violence. So, in relation to the police officer, the thing I most objected to was an interview I heard on the BBC at 1 o'clock-ish today, in which an ex-superintendent who hadn't been in the force, Met superintendent, who hadn't been in the force since 2013, was using the R word, the race, describing this as racism, right? This was a mass brawl and had to be brought to an end in some way. And the idea that the police are going around kicking everybody every time that there's an issue involving police and the public is absolutely wrong. This is Manchester Airport. They knew that they were being surrounded by cameras and they still felt under threat. These people, one of the points that I've seen made is that these are armed police officers, the kind of in which if I presume that these people had got off the floor and wanted to, they could take the gun off the police and use it against them. I am not in favour of anybody being kicked while lying on the floor. I think you have to understand. I listened to Burnham today, right? Even Burnham, a former Labour shadow Home Secretary, was saying, I'm not joining in on this politically because you've got to see the full picture. And if you listen to your reporter there, that was his point as well. This was organised violence and had to be curtailed. I'm not in favour of the kicking, but I'm taking the Burnham position, which is nor should we politicise it and be hostile to the police. He is the mayor of Greater Manchester, and if he doesn't want to get involved, and he's a Labour supporter, then I don't think that very interestingly, that nobody mentions the religion of these people. I don't think the people from Rochdale should get involved either.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I don't know anything about the religion of these people, but go on.
It's a mark of the times, isn't it? All this is over social media, so, you know, there'll be armchair pundits, I suspect, watching this and throughout the country who would draw their own conclusions from what, as Mark White seemed to be suggesting there, in any case, was very limited coverage of this so-called altercation. I do think what's really important, Michelle, is the fact that Catherine Bates of the Independent Office for Police Conduct has come out and said that there will be a thorough independent investigation. I think what's worrying, frankly, is it took her 24 hours to come out and say that, because looking at the limited footage, certainly what I've seen, I think the word Mark White used was absolutely the correct one, proportionality. There does appear to have been excessive violence that was used, and that surely, in any workplace setting, would have been prima facie evidence to suspend somebody from their duties. Not necessarily, that's not to say that they're guilty. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty in any kind of situation like this. But I think there's some questions, frankly, for the IOPC in this. And just finally, on your point about Burnham, who is absolutely right to say, people shouldn't politicise this. The thing that just concerns me, and I'm not going to relate this now to the incident, but we've talked about this many times on this show, Michelle, with Calvin and other panellists, is this whole issue now about two-tier policing. And, there are several police forces across the country who've been accused of this. And what tends to happen, whether it's a St George's Day parade and it's essentially white people that are being baton charged, or it's at Manchester Airport and people who are of British Asian origin who appear to be of the Muslim religion, we always get this pile-on social media that says, oh, that's institutional racism, oh, that's two-tier policing. I do think we need a more sensible and grown-up debate about this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, because I'm not comfortable with people being stamped on heads and kicked in faces. That's just, for me, it's just something that is just not for me. I don't really think should be happening in society. But anyway, take that to one side. I do find it a little bit concerning. I think that's the word I'll choose. You've got a protest taking place as we speak, actually. It started at 6 o'clock, and we'll be keeping eyes on this kind of stuff, don't worry. This was by a group called Manchester Stand Up to Racism. They're saying that they've got this protest, Stop Racist Police, and it's We Won't Stay Quiet Against Racist Police Violence. That's taking place. Apparently it started at 6 o'clock. And I'm just asking a simple question I've asked these people. Obviously, I've got no answer. What evidence have you actually got that this was motivated by racism? Because this group, for example, I mean, there's many people on board this, but this particular group saying, is what we witnessed in Manchester Airport, was that Greater Manchester Police attempting a George Floyd-like killing? I mean, come on now. I just find it's all getting a little bit... And these protests outside of police stations where you've got community mobs dictating, you better let these people go or else. I have got a bit of an issue with that. It's the same that we saw in Hare Hills in Leeds, when agencies had concerns about children, apparently, enough concerns to remove the children. You see people setting fire to buses, setting fire to fridges. All of a sudden, those children are back in that family. And it's like, well, hang on, you've either got a concern for those children's well-being or you don't, and if you do, has that concern suddenly abated because a load of grown-up men set fire to buses? And I just get a little bit worried that we might be teetering on the edge of mob rule in this country. So I have asked many people that question. If you're going around stating that this is racism, then please do tell me what evidence that you have got that the people that was involved in this acted and that they were motivated by racism. The other question mark that I've got in all of this, before I move on, where's all of the other footage? Because so many people keep sharing the footage at the point where the police have waded in. But I listened to one of the voice notes from someone that apparently was an eyewitness. That's what people are sharing. He says, and I quote, whilst describing the situation, something went on, so on and so forth, and then a load of brothers started punching the officers. So all of this footage going around, why isn't the footage of the instigation of all of this, where is all of that? If I was Greater Manchester Police, I could tell you now, I'd be doing everything possible to get that footage out there. It's all a mess, isn't it? What do you think to it at home? Get in touch, all the usual ways. Lots more I want to talk to you about after the break. So I shall see you in 2. But let me ask you, Reform UK, so many young people voted for them. Why do you think that is? Your thoughts?
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Karen Stevenson was born in Stoke-on-Trent and read music at Trinity College, Cambridge. She's played cello with many of the world's great orchestras under the batons of some of the most renowned conductors, and she joins me now to discuss her career and the importance of music in education. Tell me about that. What is your role at the Philharmonia?
My role at the Philharmonia is number 2 cello. I've been there for about 15 years. Sometimes I play number 1 cello as well, which is a great opportunity for me. Well,
it's interesting you say that because I often think what a very difficult life it is to be a professional musician.
I make a living out of it. It is definitely possible. We don't really like it when we get into a taxi and someone says, "What's your day job?" Because we work really hard.
I was kind of making the opposite point. Not that you'd also have a day job. I think the perfection that is required for a professional musician is extraordinary. On the whole, we are intolerant of mistakes in classical music.
Yes, we are.
And I just wondered whether you don't become very frustrated with a world in which everything else is imperfect.
You are only as good as your last concert, Michael. That's how it feels. It is a lot of pressure. Sometimes we will say, OK, a pint for every wrong note or something, but depending on the piece of music, that could be quite dangerous.
How many hours a day do you have to practice?
You have to practice much more when you're younger, I think, when you're learning. I think this is really important. And when you're at music college, I'm a busy, I'm travelling, I have a family. I can't practice as much as I used to, so you have to rely on your experience. What I really wanted to say is that there's been a lot of fear-mongering about classical music being in decline and it not being relevant, and I really wanted to say that I don't think that's the case. Our audiences have increased. They're the highest they've been in 10 years.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. The former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the education consultant, Tom Buick, are alongside me. John says, Michelle, on this Manchester thing, please, can we rush, before we rush to judgment, can we just wait and see what happened and wait for the investigations to take their time to figure it all out? Ian says, I've got to be honest, I do think the police might have overstepped the mark on this one, but it is how police would react in most European countries. Airports. Matt says he feels concerned that the mob are now dictating to the police. All of this demanding, etc., of officers to be suspended and so on and so forth. Lots of people saying, where is the footage of the officers apparently getting assaulted as well? The IOPC, they have issued a statement. Let me see if I can open that. Oh, God, it's really long. The gist of it is basically they understand the widespread shock regarding it all. They're grateful to those people that have been in touch. They've also received a referral from Greater Manchester Police, and they've met with members of the first man's family. They'll keep everybody updated, and they've also secured a significant amount of body-worn video and CCTV footage, which will be subject to detailed analysis. So there you go. Look, let's talk the election, shall we? Because so many young people, it seems, voted for Reform UK, more actually, than voted for the Tory party. According to Nigel Farage, he says that something big is happening among Gen Z voters. You're a couple of years out of being a Gen Z voter, Kelvin Mackenzie, age-wise. But what do you think this tells us? I'm doing my best, though. Yeah, you've got a good moisturiser. What do you think this tells us about the votes of the young?
Well, I think, first thing, it tells you that Farage was clever in that he spent much of his marketing money on TikTok. And anybody who knows the TikTok generation, as I do in my own household, right, I know them, I'm not part of them, as you kindly point out, right, knows that they get everything. I mean, everything off TikTok. And if it's not on TikTok, it hasn't happened. So if an H-bomb goes off in North Korea, they will have no idea about that unless TikTok carry it. So they were clever about that. I wouldn't be too buoyed up. I'd be pleased if I were Farage, but I wouldn't be too buoyed up. After all, the Conservatives were unvotable for, right, even by Conservatives. And the figure that you haven't mentioned there was that the youngsters, the 18 to 30s, 18% of them voted Green. And that, to me, was the biggest. I mean, if somebody had said to you before the election that the Greens were going to get damn near 20%, you would have said that's out of the question. So if I'm Green, I'm massively buoyed up. I'm pleased if I'm Reform. But actually, that election didn't really prove anything except how disliked the Conservative Party were.
Tom?
That's the point, isn't it? I think it's classic grievance politics, and it's not particularly new. I mean, when I was growing up in the 80s, we had Thatcher, we had a lot of youth unemployment. I was certainly not going to vote for the Thatcher government, and it's why, I joined at the time the Labour Party, which wasn't in office, had been out of office for a long time. I've got the same, I've got Gen Zers in my family. I shan't out anybody on air in terms of how they might have voted, but shall we just say, in parts of my family, Nigel Farage, he's a hero in terms of the language that he speaks about some of the problems that this country faces. And that's why I say about, in some ways, this is not new. You know, anti-establishment parties or the anti-establishment point of view is always attractive to young people, certainly attractive to me. But perhaps more importantly, you know, look at how powerful that grievance narrative is. I mean, if you're young now, if you're below the age of 30, you're very unlikely to get on the housing ladder. So the dream of home ownership's gone. You know, when I was growing up, I was the first in my family. You can come back in a minute, Calvin. I was the first in my family
you
to
tell
go.
Him, Tom. There you go.
Yeah, no, I've learned from bitter experience, Michelle. But I was the first in my family to go to university. Now that worked out extremely well because it was the dream of get a good education and you'll get a good, well-paid job. That bargain, that opportunity bargain's now gone in our society. So I'm not surprised Gen Z, you know, are looking at that narrative and saying, why on earth would I vote for parties that have been a part of creating that narrative over the last 20 or 30 years?
Well, on the question of the home ownership aspect, of course, the ability to buy a home does not exist in the same way as it did for 18 to 30s. Why? Because your life changes don't start until you're 30-odd. No. Women and men are getting married at that time, and then when they get to 30, a couple of years, and then they have thinking of having children or whatever, and then they're buying. And so the biggest percentage jump in home ownership, right, in history now belongs to the 35 to 45s. And that is what's happening. People are renting homes for longer and they're settling down later in their life and they're having children much later in their life.
Calvin, I just don't buy all of that analysis. Right. I'll tell you why.
Right. We'll just look at the stats, Tom. It would be much easier to talk about the economy.
This is something I have looked at the stats on. And whilst, you know, I'll give you something. On the demographics, people are generally, which is a problem, by the way, for this country, people are settling down much later than they were.
Well, take Michelle. She's an example.
Yeah, but let's...
She settled down at 50.
Thank you.
Now he's throwing a curveball
to try and put me off. That's not true, by the way. In case anyone's wondering, I am still 21, thank you. Carry on.
But talking of the stats, let's go back to the time when you were the famous editor of that Red Top Sun.
Very famous.
In the 1980s, it took, on average, a couple saving for a home, 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom home, about 19 months in terms of their average earnings, if they were both saving for a deposit to get on the housing ladder. It didn't matter whether they were in their early 20s or in their early 30s. It took about 19 months to do that. Now, certainly in parts of London, the same couple on average earnings, it would take 20-odd years.
They shouldn't try and live in London. So it's ridiculous.
Well, I'm using London
as London. I can't afford to live in
anywhere
London.
In the
country.
country.
Not on GB's money.
But the point is, 2 years saving for a deposit, Calvin, your generation, you did well out of that, and 20 years today. That's why people can't fulfil that dream, as I say, of home ownership. It's gone.
No, the parents are all chipping in, which never happened in my
Bank of mum and dad, if you've got it.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
If you haven't got a mum and dad, then I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, but a lot of people have got a mum and dad, but their mum and dad don't have any money to pass stuff down to them.
They do have money, yes. They're being very generous, and actually most of the home ownership is now being funded in terms of deposits by the mum and dad, and many of the people watching tonight will actually have done exactly that. And everybody, and I'm not talking about the wealthy, I'm talking about people whose house prices have gone up and then they remortgage slightly in order to give 20 grand, 10 grand or whatever.
Do you know what I'd like to see? I think if you can afford to pay rent and you've got a good credit record, I think a lot of agencies now report people's rent to the credit reference agencies. I think if you can afford to rent, and rents are very high now, you should be able to get 100% mortgage from the bank, and I think the government should underwrite the 5% or the 10% deposit. As long as you can afford to pay the rent, you should be able to afford to buy a house.
OK, so the Germans have always taken this view, and they used to view Britons, the British, as mad for beggaring themselves literally for 20 years in order to pay, whereas they allowed their spare money, because their rents weren't as high, to actually go out and enjoy themselves. They used to laugh about it.
Have you forgotten what actually happened in the financial crash? I mean, you're saying you're advocating for people to borrow 100% of asset value. What happens when things go wrong? And then you've got these kids in this situation where they've literally got nothing in their asset other than literally 100% debt.
But the issue about the 2008 crash was the subprime mortgage deals. In other words, people were getting up to their neck in assets that weren't worth anything like what the bank thought they did. This is why I make the connection here, Michelle, to if you can afford to pay the rent, maybe you've been paying the rent for 1, 2, 3 years, you've got a good credit record, you're in work, right? So it's the same mortgage test that anybody would go. Because I put this to you, frankly, paying a mortgage for most people, the bank's the landlord. I mean, if you stop paying the mortgage, the bank will come in and repossess the home. Likewise, if you're paying the rent and you stop paying, you'll get a Section 21 notice and you'll be out within 8 weeks.
There is no Section 21.
Well, the government's changing.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of Section 21.
But you'll be evicted.
Right, you're right. But first of all, banks are trying very hard not to kick anybody out, because once they put that debt on their balance sheet, then that looks bad for them. And the truth about the matter is, the great thing about the home, although I accept that the bank is the landlord, is that you can close the door and you don't have to worry about whether the landlord is going to be kicked out.
Exactly.
So I'm massively in favour, and everybody is massively in favour of owning your own home. It turns out to be a very secure investment, even if you only look at it like, I'm going to do 20 years, and at the end of it, it hasn't gone up at all, but at the end of it, that is 20 years of saving, which I would not make if I were...
Exactly. It's kept a roof over your head, and if you downsize, it's part of your pension pot when you get older. But just coming back to reform, because that's what this
But let me just make one more point on housing. You talk about TikTok and stuff. One of the things that I'm seeing happening a lot are people on TikTok, social media, youngish circle that would regard themselves as influencers, that are leading people down this path of... There's huge contractors at the moment, the likes of Serco and people like that. These companies are rocking up to a variety of different towns and cities. They're putting events on, and they're essentially saying to people, landlords in this city, in this town, we will give you a contract, and it is incredibly attractive financially. We will give you these rental contracts where the landlord is us, the likes of Serco. They'll place asylum seekers in these properties. They will guarantee rents. They will take care of the maintenance. They're paying very decent rents. You've got no void periods. And people are going for it. A lot of people are creating HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy. So they're taking a terrace house that was designed for a family or whatever. They're shoving it full of these adults, and I understand why people are doing it, because they're motivated by financial greed for themselves, but nobody is pressing pause, thinking about the effect of what they're doing on those local communities, because I bet my bottom dollar those people on TikTok, they're not doing it in their streets. Oh no, they'll be sticking them up north in some random town and city. Hull. Yeah, in places like Hull. So I think that needs a lot more attention and focus, because it removes houses away and off the market from locals that would want to buy them. It's putting huge strains on the local amenities, because you're now shoving multiple people in these houses that were never designed for that at all. So I think that is not getting explored enough at all, and I would say
this is one of the problems about mass migration, isn't it? We are seeing it, and it
I wonder when we segue to that, Kelvin.
No, but it's a point made by Michelle. It is an issue that you're living in a quite poor northern town where properties are very cheap, and therefore the conversion price is very cheap. You're paying 90,000 for a house, you're spending 30 grand on doing it up, and unbelievably, you're getting a return of 12 or 15%. So you can't blame people for doing it. So the only way to stop all this is actually turn the boats back in some form or another, which is the reason why Reform are doing so well at the moment, because nobody else. I see that Tugendhat now, the Tories now are saying, oh, right, we're heading towards you. Right?
But I think you can blame people for that. I think you can blame people for that. I'm a businesswoman. I'm motivated by profit, I'm not going to lie, but I would never get into one of those situations, because I think that morally it is wrong to be transforming these communities in that way. I think it's absolutely wrong, and I think anyone that's doing it, great, you might think you're the big I am on your TikToks, flashing your cars or whatever, but you should actually be looking inwards and asking yourself, are you having a positive effect on communities? Because I would put to you that absolutely, no, you are not. Look, there's lots more I want to talk to you about after the break. I want to talk about cash 1s and 2s. We're not going to be minting any new ones. Is that an issue? Start of cashless society, perhaps, or not? And also, what's going on with our morals in this country? A dating site now, naked dating on television. I mean, come on now. I'll see you in 2.
Calvin and I signed.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. There's likely to be something a bit drier and warmer early next week, but before then, plenty of showers. And actually, through the end of today, there is still some more persistent rain affecting some parts of the southeast due to a waving frontal system that's already brought quite a bit of rain. That rain in the far southeast should clear through as we go through the next few hours, though. And so for many, it is going to be a largely dry night, just a scattering of showers continuing across western parts of Scotland in particular, also parts of Northern Ireland and northwest England. Many places, though, having some clear skies, and it may be a touch fresher than last night towards the northwest, still quite warm and muggy towards the southeast. And as we go through tomorrow morning, then a bright start for many. Maybe the odd pocket of mist and fog around, but I think on the whole it's largely dry. A few showers already pushing into parts of western England and Wales, but further east a drier story. A few showers also for western parts of Northern Ireland, but it's down the western side of Scotland where the showers are going to be most frequent, and there could already be some heavy ones as we go through the morning. Eastern parts of Scotland clinging on to some fine sunny weather through a large chunk of the morning, but as we head towards the afternoon, those showers are going to become a bit more widespread. Some of them could be on the heavy side, and there could be the odd rumble of thunder mixed in, albeit they don't look as intense as the showers that we saw yesterday. Plenty of showers for Northern Ireland. Parts of western England and Wales may see a few showers, staying dry towards the east, and a decent amount of sunshine, and with that feeling pretty warm again, temperatures in the mid-20s for some. Looking ahead to Saturday, and after a mostly fine start for many of us, we are going to see the showers developing yet again. Slight differences in where we're most likely to see the showers. Probably Northern England, North Wales could see the heaviest showers on Saturday, and they could be quite slow moving because the winds will be dropping out a little bit. But Sunday into Monday looks drier and warmer. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King in Surrey. The anti-clockwise M25, long delays at the moment from junction 9 at Leatherhead towards junction 6 at Godstone through the roadworks. Kent, London-bound M20, there's a lane closed on the exit slip road at junction 6 at Maidstone following a breakdown. Derbyshire southbound M1 has a lane closed and queues. It's all following an accident just after junction 29 at Chesterfield. Delays though back towards 29A at Bolsover. Roundhay in Leeds, the A58 on Easterley Road is currently closed in both directions. Long delays after accident investigation work just near to Ascot Hill. And also in West Yorkshire, the eastbound M62, long delays, 2 lanes closed after an accident around junction 28 at Tingley. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Michelle Dewberry, Kelvin Mackenzie and Tom Hewitt remain alongside me. Look, all we've spent our entire break talking about is the topic after this one. So I'm going to get through this one as quick as we can because there's a lot of excitement among these men alongside me to get to that final topic about nakedness on television. But before we get there, hold your horses, contain your excitement, gents, because I want to talk to you about pennies. The Treasury has apparently said that no new coin orders will be placed this time, and this is for the first time. So we're not going to be minting any more 1 and 2 pences. They're not going to be out of circulation, but not going to be creating any more. Are you concerned about this, Tom? Does it matter?
I am concerned about it, but I'm sort of conflicted on it. And the reason why, I mean, I think back to actually when I was a councillor, let's just say, in a part of the country, actually, I'll name it Hove, which has got quite a few old age...
it's very posh, in case you don't know.
Posh, but it's also got, you know, a lot of people Calvin's age knocking around, causing trouble.
Ageism alert.
Yeah, indeed. But, you know, my mailbag used to be full of complaints from senior citizens about the parking machines that the council put in, which were either QR codes or you had to use your debit cards.
Ringo.
And, you know, you just want to park for an hour, it's £1 an hour, you've got £1 in your pocket. It's not exactly very convenient. So for that reason, I don't think we should go to a cashless society. That said, and I was just checking the figures earlier, £21 billion a year in this country is lost, according to HMRC, to the Exchequer because of the cash-in-hand economy. So I look at the other side of the ledger and I think £21 billion, that would pay for early years, breakfast clubs, further education colleges and apprenticeships, that budget, every single year. So I think there is a trade-off here between the cashless society and the digital divide. We don't want to be pitting the digital natives against the non-digital natives, against the fact that if we could capture more tax, legitimate tax to fund public services, I'm sure we'd all agree we could do that right now.
You mentioned those car parking machines, by the way. I saw one of the scams. They were putting these stickers, QR code stickers, over the stickers on the car park things, so people were taking out their phones, and they were going to, scan this to pay their parking, and they were being scammed. It's awful, awful. Why are you laughing? It's not funny.
Because it's happened to him several times already.
It was my QR code. I've made a fortune. No, I think I think it's the cash aspect is a complete racket. In my town, there is a Chinese fish and chip shop. Very nice guy. I go in there after some time away, and I say I like whatever I want, and he says, and I haven't got any cash. I said, will you take the card? He said, oh no. He said, card will never catch on, right? He made me go across the road, right? Literally take money out of the bank in the wall and go back and pay him. Ridiculous idea. There is only one reason, let's face it, why people are taking cash. Okay, they are taking cash to avoid HMRC, right? Why don't we?
How do you know?
Well, you tell me.
How do you know that every single person who's doing that is doing it?
Well, it can't be traced, can it? And therefore, if it can't be traced, it can't be. Nobody can know about it. So I take Tom's point about that. I didn't know about the 21 billion. A good idea, but I'm also irritated. So, for instance, my local barber, as you can see, he won't get rich.
You're keeping him in business. Yeah,
he won't get rich.
Regular.
It's cash only in there, right? This is a high street Turkish barber, very good people, I'm sure, right? But you have to pay cash, right? I don't like carrying cash. In fact, I don't carry cash. What's the point of having a card? Why can't I just do that? There's one I say there is only one reason why people are taking cash. And I think there should be a law which says you can offer cash or card.
I think there should be a law that says you can't decline cash. I think if somebody wants to pay with the legal tender of this country, i.e. coins, paper notes, I think it should be illegal to decline to take cash payments in society.
Cash or card.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can have the option of card, no problem, but you get a lot of businesses that say card only. I think that should be illegal. Look, OK, then, let's do it. I think I'm going to regret choosing this topic because the excitement levels, the blood pressure in this studio, I might finish them off. I might come back after the break. They might not be there. You might never see these two again because after the break, oh, God, that didn't sound right, did it? I definitely don't want to finish them off. After the break, I want to talk to you about nakedness on television. I personally think we've got too much of it now. We've got a TV show, naked dating on television. What's wrong with you all? Let's talk about it in 2.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new 2-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like, and he also helps people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, The Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know, and there will be a lot more, and he's been getting the money to do this, and I think it's he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dubes & Co. Alongside me, Kelvin McKenzie and Tom Buick remain. Right, let's get stuck into this final topic then, shall we? I'm pondering today whether we as a society are just completely devoid of morals these days, because there seems to be so much stuff on television which I would regard as really quite inappropriate. And I do confess I'm perhaps being a bit prudish, but some of the stuff that seems to be getting commissioned, it seems to be getting lower and lower, like more low rent as kind of years and months progress. There's one now that's been commissioned, a show called Dating Naked. Now, these contestants will live together in a villa, completely naked, nothing, not a stitch on them, so it's not for the faint-hearted, all to try and get £50,000. Now, I mean, each to their own and all that, if that's what you want to do in your spare time, but is this the kind of thing we need on television, Kelvin McKenzie?
Well, this show is going out on a failing streaming platform called Paramount currently, and they've got Rylan involved in it, and imagine they had to pay him a lot of money. I think the home is in Colombia, and he flies in occasionally and gives his views about everything. I personally don't think it'll be successful. Now, Channel 4 had quite a surprising success with Naked Attraction, right? And I saw Tom on there, and he didn't he didn't do it very well for obvious reasons. And so I accept your view of it, and I find it bizarre that they're prepared to invest all this money in it. But the truth about the matter is there are no barriers now, right? And on that basis, after all, pornography is everywhere. But
I think that's one of the reasons that society is declining in so many ways. I think that it's awful that young people can quickly and easily access like awful, disgusting, so I'm told, pornographic imagery. I think that's wrong, and I think that's at the heart of a lot of issues in society. You mentioned the shows that are commissioned. I remember there was one show, and it was apparently to educate children about puberty and sexual development. It was a load of naked adults standing in front of children. And I think, what's this? Doesn't this ring alarm bells? Why is an adult, do you want to be naked in front of a child that's not your own? Point one. Why, as an adult, would you want your child to be naked in front of an adult that's not you? And then point three, why is the entire thing on television? There's something not right about it all to me, Tom. Your thoughts?
Well, this is where I start to feel very old, not quite as old as Calvin. That's my second ageist crack.
He's going to be suing GB News.
Yeah, I know he will be. But no, I mean, God, it's a long way, isn't it, from the days when it was a novelty if somebody naked turned up in the art block, and as students, you go down to the art block to see a few love handles, not Love Island, but a love handle or two. Look, I don't feel very qualified to even be talking about this subject, in the sense that I've got a body mass index of a pork scratching. Because you showed that promo photo there, and there were no dad bods in there. It's very much perfection, isn't it, in terms of the body type. So I'm not sure we want these kind of shows, as you say, on terrestrial television or on the mainstream platforms, because they don't exactly portray real life, do they?
But then I think as well, when you watch movies, the amount of sexual content and stuff like that, I don't understand why it's necessary. Surely two people can go into a room and close the door and then you can leave the rest to your imagination. Why do you need to be showing really increasingly graphic content? I remember for my sins watching, again, a grown man, and I can't believe I'm about to say this sentence, and I do apologise because I found it a little bit inappropriate. He was playing a piano with his penis.
Actually,
we're not past the watershed yet, guys. So let's.
No, but he was.
I know.
This was on.
What was that on?
I didn't use any swear words, so I won't be in trouble with any watersheds. What was it on? What do you want me to do? Send you the recording of it? So
no. But when was it? Recently?
It wasn't that long ago. I feel like you can all Google it if you're interested. But I just think it's so inappropriate. And I think what is going on in commissioning standards, where we seem to have normalised what I would call quite private, intimate things.
Isn't the reality of television now, it's split up into so many things, that your children are not watching what you're watching, right? You've got an 18-year-old, I think. He would definitely not be watching what you and your missus are watching. And therefore, it's up to them. If they want to watch a totally naked collection of people inside a villa, what I'm surprised about is Paramount is an American company and they are enormously prudish about stuff on the networks. But now that we've got streaming, and therefore they think they can probably chance their arm a bit more. They're desperate to get audience, and these streamers are in a lot of trouble. So this could be. I'm not saying it's the last throw of the dice, but it's a gamble.
What is interesting, the show was canned in America after 3 series, so maybe on your point, Michelle,
Ernie has
there
just
isn't
been
a
in
market for
touch.
it.
Ernie's just been in touch on the website saying, why are you talking about naked dating when you should be talking about the goings-on in Manchester Airport? Ernie, my friend, we literally started the programme talking about that Manchester Arena situation. Who's this has got in touch? Duncan, says Michelle. Talking about cashless society, if we had a cashless society, that would make crime totally impossible. I mean, I couldn't disagree with you more if I tried there, Duncan. Look at how much digital fraud happens on a probably hourly basis in this society. I would argue, actually, that you're more susceptible to being defrauded when you're doing things electronically, but all opinions are welcome. Nicholas says, get rid of the 1 and 2p coins. What we should have now is £5 coins and even perhaps a £10 coin. The naked dating has left you all very divided, I can tell you. I'll leave you two to Google it in your pleasure. That is all we've got time for. Thanks, gents. Thanks to each and every one of you at home, and I'll see you tomorrow. Night-night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. There's likely to be something a bit drier and warmer early next week, but before then, plenty of showers. And actually, through the end of today, there is still some more persistent rain affecting some parts of the southeast due to a waving frontal system that's already brought quite a bit of rain. That rain in the far southeast should clear through as we go through the next few hours, though. And so for many, it is going to be a largely dry night, just a scattering of showers continuing across western parts of Scotland in particular, also parts of Northern Ireland and northwest England. Many places, though, having some clear skies, and it may be a touch fresher than last night towards the northwest, still quite warm and muggy towards the southeast. And as we go through tomorrow morning, then a bright start for many. Maybe the odd pocket of mist and fog around, but I think on the whole it's largely dry. A few showers already pushing into parts of western England and Wales, but further east a drier story. A few showers also for western parts of Northern Ireland, but it's down the western side of Scotland where the showers are going to be most frequent, and there could already be some heavy ones as we go through the morning. Eastern parts of Scotland clinging on to some fine sunny weather through a large chunk of the morning, but as we head towards the afternoon, those showers are